Hello! YouTube assures me I'm live, but I'm going to wait for confirmation of that. But while I'm waiting, I shall say hello to each and every one of you. Wow, there are so many people there. Newbies as well, I see. I'm still waiting for the thumbs up from Mike. Oh, I've got the thumbs up from Mike, so we can get going. Right, if you've got any questions, stick them in. Let's get on with it. So, hello and welcome officially. Affinity Publisher 2 for iPad was the most requested app from the latest updates, so that is why we are here. If you don't know me, I'm Elaine Giles. I'm a long-time trainer, podcast host and inveterate geek. And my YouTube channel is where you'll find tips, tricks, full training sessions for a huge range of apps, but especially the Affinity apps. We are broadcasting in 1080p. Make sure that you are receiving in 1080p. There is a cog in the lower right hand corner, and if you are receiving in 1080p, there will be a red flash on it. So do check that out. While you're down there, there is a like button. So if you like what you see tonight or on catch up, then do hit the like button. There's also a subscribe button. That would help us out greatly, and it would mean that you don't miss out on any future events. So, questions. Put the questions in the chat. If you can remember to put a Q at the front, that would be great. Mike's going to gather them together. We will answer them either at a relevant point or during the full Q&A at the end of the session. So it just makes it easier if you can remember to put that Q at the beginning. And if you can provide enough context so we know precisely what you're referring to. So, for instance, if you're saying, what's that button on the left? I don't know. You're going to have to give me a little bit more information. So that would help us out as well. So, Affinity Publisher 2 for iPad at long last, I know. Right, it was released on the 9th of November. It is said to be version 2, although there was never a version 1 for iPad. I can understand why they've done this, because they didn't just release Affinity Publisher for iPad, they released Affinity for everything. So everything got replaced. All the version 1 apps for the desktop and the 2 apps that were available on mobile. Okay, so we're interested in Publisher, particularly on the iPad. But I'm going to explain a little bit about the other apps because of the licensing situation. So we are talking about all 3 of the applications, the Affinity Suite applications, but we are talking about them on 3 different platforms. So they are now all available on macOS, Windows and iPad OS. The full pricing will be as follows. So for the iPad app, $17.99 is the full price. If you were to buy that lot, it would cost you £413.91. But there is a special launch discount, which is 40% off. Even so, purchased individually, that would still cost you £245.91, which is why there is a universal license. So even if you are only using the iPad apps, it's not actually that much more expensive to go for the universal license and get the lot. So at the moment, during the launch sale, 40% off, you can get a universal license for $89.99, $99.99 or €119.99. That gives you access to all of the iPad applications and all of the desktop applications. Not just for one desktop platform, but for them both. Now you may think, oh, I use a Mac or I use Windows and I'm never going to need to use the other one. It's still cheaper to get the universal license. And it does mean if in the future you need to switch platforms or you choose to switch platforms, you're already set up with your licensing. I remember a nightmare scenario when I was a Windows user and I switched to Mac. And I wanted to upgrade my Adobe Creative Cloud license, but it needed to be a cross-grade because I'd moved from Windows to Mac. They had never heard of such a thing. It took them weeks to work it out. So with this universal license, you have no issues whatsoever on any platform. It is on sale until the 14th of December. They have confirmed that. It doesn't mean it won't be on sale in the future, but it does mean that it won't be on sale immediately after the 14th of December. So you've got time to go and have a look at it. After that time, the full prices are $144.99, $169.99 or $199.99. Still cost effective, but you might as well get the discount as not. Now, in terms of purchasing and activating and all of that, you are going to need an Affinity account. This is independent of the device account that you have for your iPad. So that would be your Apple ID. This account that I'm talking about is your Affinity ID. Now, people have reported having problems if the email addresses don't match. The way I purchased mine was the easy way. I went to Affinity and I bought it from them. And that way, when I came to log in and activate it on my iPad, it is the same email address. I had no problems whatsoever. If you look in the App Store, you will see people complaining vehemently. And what they're complaining about is the activation part of it. And it could be that their Apple ID and their Affinity ID don't match, and they've got to do some magic at the Affinity back end first. So before you start thinking it's not worked, if you have purchased it via Apple, you will need to link the two accounts in some way. I didn't need to do that, but I think that's what the problem is for people who are having issues. Right, in terms of what you need, we're not interested in the desktop stuff, but iPadOS, you're going to need a minimum of iPadOS 15, which is the one before the very latest. In terms of hardware, it's quite forgiving. I was surprised. There was talk before it was actually released that it would only support the very latest iPad. But my 2015 12.9 inch, which was the first generation of the iPad Pro, runs it fine, which I'm very impressed with. 7 years, that's very impressive. Right down to the iPad mini. So you may have trouble squinting at the screen, but it will work. Now, as I started with the Affinity Publisher session, I'm starting with what's missing in the iPad version. There's a lot of crossover here. Obviously, if it's not in the desktop version, it's unlikely to be in the iPad version. And the things that caused much consternation was there's still no output to EPUB, I'm afraid. I think Affinity look at this as being producing PDFs and printed copy. But I know, you want it. So do I, but it's not there yet. We still don't have cross-references. We do not have support for variable fonts. We do not have support for grep styles, and I explained this in relation to the desktop version as being basically conditional styles. So a style that applies to a certain element of text. So maybe I want every time I put Elaine that I want it in red. That's not there. However, and this is a biggie, sadly, the iPad version does not have data merge. The desktop version does. Clearly does, and so does version 1, but it's not there on iPad yet. I'm assuming it's something they would contemplate bringing to iPad, but it's not there yet. So, purchasing, licensing and installing. As I said, I purchased mine direct from Affinity. This is the license that you would get from Affinity. This is confirmation of purchase, and it was completely plain sailing for me. That could have been because the email address is matched. Let me know in the chat, did you have problems? Did you have to do some magic and link the two? One of the reasons that I purchased directly from Affinity was I didn't consider that Apple needed 30% of what I was paying, considering I was getting it quite cost effectively to start with. Then, once I'd purchased it, I needed to go in here and actually purchase, in massive air quotes, the apps. So it will say get, because there is a 30-day free trial. When you've downloaded it, you will be given the option to take the 30-day trial or activate it. And when you come to put your details in, the activation that it's looking for, you're logging into your Affinity account. So, has anybody had any big issues with that, Mike?
There is a question, actually.
Okay.
Dawn says, have you had any problems with it, though? Assets not working, freezing up, things missing?
Oh, the fun and games I have had prepping this session. Literally about 30 minutes ago, I thought, right, I've downloaded stuff. I need to get rid of it to clear it for the demo. So I cleared everything, and then I went into it and I wanted to get my files from Dropbox, and it had disconnected from Dropbox. I actually had to reboot the entire iPad to get that working again. So although they have brought out a point update, as you can see there, it was updated a week ago, so it's version 2.0.2. Yes, I have had some issues. It's just a bit erratic, doing weird things. So I'd sat there and I was trying to do something incredibly simple, like put a stroke on a frame. and it didn't work. It didn't work 20 times. And then as Mike walked in and I said, just look at this, it's ridiculous. It worked. So I would say it's still a little bit erratic, but then it is, although they're selling it as version 2, it is version 1. I would expect that to maybe iron itself out shortly. I haven't had a lot of problems with the desktop versions. None of them. I've not seen anything erratic in there. But the iPad, I'm putting it down to the iPad. I'm writing it off as an issue with the iPad. But yes, I have seen weirdness.
Dawn says she's had to completely wipe it twice, and Kim said she purchased the universal license and only got a receipt for photo.
Where did you purchase the license from? Did you purchase it directly from Affinity, or was this through the App Store? I would avoid the App Store like the plague when it comes to buying this. I would, because I've never seen another company do it in this way. I know there are ones that have got some kind of license and then you go into the app. But the thing with this is, I was wondering how Apple would know that you'd bought the whole thing. It has worked seamlessly for me from an activation perspective, to the point the first app I went into was Publisher. It wanted to activate it, so I activated it. And then when I went into Designer and Photo, it was already activated. And I thought, that's interesting. So I didn't need to do it 3 times. But I felt the most straightforward way of purchasing it was to purchase it directly from Affinity. And I had 0 problems. But I can imagine if you've bought one app and then decide you want the universal, that's going to cause problems. And I can imagine that there would be issues. The issues I've seen, I wouldn't say I was at the stage where I needed to sort of take it off the iPad and put it back on. Although for tonight, I did think it wise to stick all 3 apps on another iPad, just in case. Just in case the first one takes one on itself and I can't get out of it. But we'll see tonight if I have problems, won't we? As I've said, things disappearing off the canvas, all that kind of stuff. Just odd weirdness. We'll do a drinking game tonight. If you see any odd weirdness, have a drink. I might. Okay, is that it for questions at the moment?
Yeah, Kim said she got it directly from Affinity.
I wouldn't expect any issues from them. You saw the little thing I got. So if you go into your Affinity account, are you seeing anything like that? Because what that is, it says it's a universal license towards the top, and it actually gives you the links there to download the desktop versions, and then below that. So at that point, it knows that you've bought more than photo. So you should be seeing something like that in your Affinity account. So fingers crossed that sorts itself out. I know in terms of needing help, they are inundated. So I think the way that they've done it, the way they launched it, I think it would have been a much better idea to tell you the day before that there was a universal license and explain what it was before you could buy a thing. And that way it would have given you a little bit of time to think and understand what was going on. Some people dived in and bought Affinity Publisher 2 and then realised they actually should have gone for the universal license. But that was just the way they did it. People need a little bit more time, I think. Okay, so let's go in and have a look at it. I'd love to give you a running order, but I'm going to be driven by you, so we'll see. At the beginning, I'm going to be focusing on setting it up. Now, I can't say setting it up correctly, but certainly setting it up in such a way that you know what the options are and what's going on. 2 things in particular, the very first things I'm going to be looking at, are something that I will have set up for tonight, and I will show you why. So, fingers crossed, we can see my iPad at some point. Now, when I get my iPad shared, I'm not going to be able to see a thing. This app that is letting me share my iPad blanks out every monitor on my computer. So bad words were said about that, because that's ridiculous. I can't see the chat. I can't see whether I'm still broadcasting. I have no idea. But fingers crossed you can actually see my iPad. I can see it on my screen, so that's looking good. So this is an M1. It's not the very latest. It is, was it last year? Is it a last year's model? I think it was. 2021, I think. As you can see, first question, can you have the version 1 iOS apps and the version 2 installed together? Yes, you can. They install alongside it. In relation to can you edit files from Photo and Designer version 1 in version 2? Yes, you can, but you cannot go backwards. So you may need them there for backwards compatibility with other people, and it is fine to leave them sat there. I have put them in a folder out the way, but for tonight, so you can see it, I've got them there. There is no problem with that at all. So, Affinity Publisher, right. I'm just going to get this back to what it will look like when you go into it. So, this is the home screen, and this provides you with access to Live Docs, which is at the top on the left. You can create a new file, you can open files, you have access to templates, samples, and the help file. Now, before we start looking at all of that, down at the bottom is where your account is, and below that you have the preferences. And the preferences is where I'm heading first, so you know what's going on. Right, so in the preferences, and I know there's a lot of them, and they're not actually, some of the titles don't actually help much. But I want to show you that by default, down at the bottom here, we have Show Touches and Present on External Displays. So I have turned on Show Touches. So you saw that move. But now, whenever I touch the screen, wherever I touch the screen, you see a blue dot. So I've turned that on so I don't have to constantly describe with an A to Z grid system where I'm tapping. So Show Touches shows the touches as you're working about the screen. Fantastic for demonstrations, probably overkill if you're just trying to work, but that's why I've turned it on. Right, the other one at the bottom, which is Present on External Displays, I doubt many people would need to have this enabled, but here's what happens if I don't. So you can see it says Present and it's off. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to just tap New and create a new file and go in there. Oh, that's interesting. That isn't what should be happening, but never mind. Let's go back in. Do I know? Oh, I've already changed it. The default is that is on, and this is why that's a problem. So I'm going to tap Done and go into that file. And now you see that is what you would see. All you're seeing is the work area. You're not seeing the interface, which is absolutely useless for training. So back in the preferences in here, I turn off Present. I'm not trying to take my document and present it to a group of people like a PowerPoint. Now, if you are, then that is what will happen. But if what you're trying to do is train people, like I am, and you're thinking, where's the interface gone? That's why the interface has gone. So those two options, to me, would be nice together, because I'm not interested in the caching business. It would be Show Touches and Present on External Display. So yes to Show Touches, no to presenting on an external display, because I want you to see the interface. So these preferences aren't optional. In a way, you know, you may need to go into here and make a few changes for yourself. You might not initially think that you would, but there are things like that are hidden in here. For example, if you find that you're working on an old iPad and it starts to slow down, then maybe reduce the undo limit, which is in the middle. It's set to 128 by default. You've also got an autosave interval. So if your file is very big, you may want to change the autosave interval. So it is worth going into the preferences and actually having a look at it, particularly trying to forestall any problems that you've got. Also in here, you've got options for the user interface. So if you prefer different colours, you can change the background grey, you can change the artboard, you can even move into left-handed mode. I did enable that just to have a look at it and then lost myself. But it is there. So once we've been in and had a look at it, remind me, we'll go back and have another look. We'll enable it and see it. One thing that might help you if you're thinking, oh, what does this bit do? What do I need to hold? Is there is a status bar. It's turned off by default. So that's on the right-hand side. Show the status bar. That turns it into a kind of desktop app where you've got feedback constantly in the status bar at the bottom. Then you've got a few other points in there. The one that gets people is the Show Undo and Redo buttons. There are no undo and redo buttons by default. You actually have to turn them on. The reason that they're not there is that they're touch enabled. A double-fingered tap will undo and a three-fingered tap will redo. So I'm going to leave this at this point because it's all a bit, if you've not seen it, it's like, what's she talking about? So let's go and have a look at it, and then we will come back in here when it's relevant and make changes. So we were back in here, and I was saying the first thing is Live Docs. So I made a new file, and all of a sudden this appeared in my Live Docs area. The Live Docs area is an area of storage inside Affinity Publisher where your files live while you're working on them. It's a little bit like limbo, because if your iPad is stolen, those files aren't anywhere else. They're on this iPad in a little storage area. So Live Docs is for docs that you're working on. You would want to save those files elsewhere, a cloud service, to work on them on your desktop. But you could have 10, 20 files in here that you're working on. It's completely up to you when and if you save them, how you transfer them, what you do with them. But what you're seeing in the Live Docs, it's not an area that you can just add a file to. It automatically appears in here when you're working on a file. So when you've created a new file or when you've opened a file. And what you'll get is a working copy in the Live Docs area. Then we have the new file dialog box, which is as close as humanly possible to the desktop version. They've managed to squeeze everything in. Some things have moved fractionally. So your portrait and landscape buttons, which are up here to the left of the blue dot, are fractionally different. But other than that, it's very, very similar. So what you have in here are collections of document types. So these are the print ones. And if we move down there, there are the press ready group. Keep going, you have photo, then you have web and devices. They have added architectural by demand. So that's a new section. And although this is on an iPad, it is fully identical to the desktop version. So you can also in here add your own groups, delete stuff, add your own presets, whatever you need to do. If you're going to do that, if that is really important to you, maybe you're rolling this out for a group of people and you don't want any architectural stuff ever and you're going to delete it, make some screenshots and make some notes of how you want it set up, and then future you will be able to look back at that and set up a new iPad very, very quickly. Right, so we will make a new file. We will make it a print file and I will go for A4. Right, you can see in here at the moment that at the top it's toggled onto landscape. So let's toggle. It's not doing a thing there, is it? There we go. All right, it's toggled onto portrait. So we can see the dimensions in the middle of it, millimeters, whether you want preferred embedded images. One question in relation to images. I would embed the images if I was working on an iPad. I don't want any issues. You can, however, work with linked images, but you need to enable linked services to work with linked images. You can't just have your images anywhere. They either need to be in iCloud or they need to be in Dropbox. Simple as that. So personally, I always prefer embedded anyway, but if you want linked, they're going to have to be in a set place. We've got whether it is facing pages or not. So I'm going to make it facing pages, and it's set to horizontal and on the right, and the number of pages, and I've only got one in there. So let's add a few more. So we'll add that, make 8 pages, and the colour is set to RGB. All right, this is the general section. I can then go on to the margins and bleed, which is under a different tab. But there they are in there, and I don't particularly need any of that at the moment. So once I've set that up, the only thing I changed in there was the number of pages. I'm going to tap OK, and that creates me a new document, and it opens that document as well. So just so we know that this is the A4 document, let's draw out some text. And that would be interesting, wouldn't it? That would be very nice if I could add some text to that. So I'm just going to put document. This is literally just so I know that this document has some stuff in it. And then I'm going to use the button in the top left corner to go back. And you can now see I've got 2 live documents. And that text clearly wasn't big enough to be able to see it. But I can still tell which is which. It's incredibly tiny, but let me see if I can actually touch it. There, it's saying 8 pages. This one is a single page, so I can tell which document it is from there. You will notice now that I have 2 documents, both of them are untitled, so they're not saved at all. So that is something to think about. Although they're semi-saved. There is a concept of being half saved. I know, you can't really do that, can you? But Semi-saved means they're in the live docs, but they're not saved anywhere else for working on anywhere else. So if I wanted this one, my 8-page one, I would tap on the burger menu, and I've got save and save as. At the moment, they should do exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to tap save. It then offers me a file name, which is always going to come up with untitled. So we'll get rid of that. I'll just move that back. And that is our, let's put 8-page file. 8 pages.
Can I interrupt you with a question?
Yes, you can.
Roast Chestnut says, what's the difference between print and print ready?
The difference between print and print ready is print tends to be RGB, it tends to have no bleed. It's not for sending for print, it is for printing usually yourself. Press ready is when you would send it out to a print service, at which point press ready tends to be CMYK, it tends to have a bleed on it, it tends to have printer's marks and other elements like that. In terms of you deciding, oh, print ready sounds better rather than press ready rather sounds better. Don't do that, because if you do and it's CMYK, your colours will look really muddy when you print it. So if you're printing it, I would use print. If you're sending it out for print, I would use press ready. Do we have anything else?
Piper's Car asked about getting transferring photos onto the iPad. So I've suggested Dropbox. I don't know if you want to throw anything in there.
If you mean putting them in a file, I'm demonstrating that shortly. If you mean actually transferring them to an iPad so they're available for use on the iPad, any cloud service that you can hook up to the file system, which again you'll see when I put these photos in. That's it.
One more just come in. How do you get the keyboard on screen?
If I hide the keyboard, you can see that the flashing bar disappears, but as soon as I tap in there, the keyboard comes up. There are occasions when the keyboard does not spring up automatically, but this little symbol, I'm going to have to start off down here. That symbol, you can't see that very well, can you? It's behind it. But the keyboard symbol in the lower right there appears in the middle of the screen at the bottom. It's easy to miss it. It's not white. It's like a very dark grey icon. But you can then tap that and bring the keyboard back. Most of the time, it springs up when required and hides when not required. Right, so this is my 8 pages. This is the point where I decide if I want to save the history with it. So as I've been editing my document, it's been retaining the history, and you have a choice to either save that history, your edit history, with the file or not. It will make the file slightly larger, but not hugely, not usually anyway, unless you've been putting images in and then taking them out. Depends, personal choice on that. What I will say is, because it's an iPad, you've sat here and you thought, I'll just type this up and make a PDF, and then I'll delete that, and then I'll do something else with the document. If you then save the history with it, this was an option in Word, wasn't it, Mike? It automatically saved the history in Word, which wasn't good when people had written resignation letters and then didn't save them, but it was saved automatically in the history. So think carefully about what you've done with this document as to whether you want the history or not. But if you do, you just tap it and that will save the history with it. If you don't, because you're ready in this document, you don't need to go backwards in your edits on the desktop, then you don't need to save the history with it. So I'm going to tap save. At this point, it brings up this dialog box. Your version of this dialog box may be completely different to mine, because it's got in there recently used and it's looking at the Affinity Publisher folder, but it's not really telling me where. You may not have an Affinity Publisher folder. In the locations, so we'll forget that one. In the locations, you can see I've got iCloud Drive, I have on my iPad, I've got Google Drive, Dropbox and Acrobat. You may have more, you may have less. It depends on how your iPad is configured. So most people have iCloud Drive. My iCloud Drive, I loathe it with a passion that knows no bounds. You can see I have problems with the folders. One of them has the right icon but the wrong name. That would be Publisher. The other two have the right name and well, the Affinity Designer one has the wrong icon. In fact, the Affinity Photo one's got the wrong icon as well, because that's the old icon. That's what I see on this iPad. On another iPad, I will see something different. On my desktop, I'll see something different again. It is how iCloud Drive works, or as I call it, doesn't work. It's just the way Apple go about it. So I must admit, iCloud Drive would not be my preference. On my iPad, these are folders that are only stored on this iPad, but it is different from the live docs. You can see now my Affinity Designer one's right, apart from the fact it's the old icon. The photo one's right, and the Affinity Publisher one's right. So I could save them in there, but the problem with doing that is, again, they're only local to this iPad, and the safest place to put it is in the cloud somewhere. So that's my Google Drive. And fingers crossed, this is my Dropbox. Oh, it's working now. Right, the way that I have these organised, if you look at Dropbox and you look at Google Drive, they look very similar in terms of folders. Maybe Mike can find the link. I discussed how I organise files and folders on an episode of MacBites After Hours last week. So what I would do in here, if I want to save this, I have a dedicated folder for each application that I need to work with. Dropbox puts folders in the apps folder, but Dropbox does not know about the Affinity apps. So I have created a second folder called Application Support, and that sits in the root of my Dropbox. If I tap on there, this has got all the folders in it for all of the apps that I work with. So if I'm saving something and it's maybe assets, and they could work in Photo, Designer or Publisher, I would put them in this Affinity Apps folder. If it's only for Designer or Photo or Publisher, then I have a dedicated folder for each one. So in my Affinity Publisher folder, you can see I've got all kinds of stuff here, including Mike's stuff. I had a quick tidy up. So if I want to put that in here, all I need to do is navigate to it and then tap Save. And that file is now saved in the cloud. But it is not the file that is in this live docs. So if I've totally finished with it, I can tap the X in the top left and says, are you sure that you want to close this document? Now, it's not prompting me to save it because it's only literally just saved it and it clearly knows that. So I'm going to close that document. It doesn't mean that I can't ever edit it again. On here, I would just need to go and open it. So this time, I'm going to tap on Open. I'm going to navigate exactly where we were. So Application Support and into Affinity Publisher when it's had a think about it. And it should be stored in there. And we called it 8 pages. And there it is in the top right corner. And as I tap it, it opens it. It actually loads it into the live docs and it opens it in here. And then when we go back, the 8 pages file is still there. But if I have completely finished with that, then I would tap it and close without saving, so I've not made any changes to it, and leave it where it is in the cloud until I need it next time. The reason that I don't leave it in this live docs is if I make changes elsewhere, the one in my live docs won't have those changes. So leave it in the cloud, edit it all up there, and then download it when I need it. Right, we've looked at new, so let's have a look at open. But this time, instead of going to Affinity Publisher folder, I'm going to go to the root of Dropbox, and I'm going to go to my projects folder. And I have my active projects in here, and there is Publisher 2 for iPad, which is this session, and there are my files for this. So I'm going to start off with something that is coming out tomorrow, so it's a sneak peek. Every December for MacBites, we run an advent calendar, and every day there is something free. And tomorrow's freebie, on the 1st of December, is the MacBites Quirk Book. It's like a workbook, only we're quirky, so it's a quirk book. So this was totally designed on the desktop version. This has not been downloaded to this iPad at all yet. So let's have a look what happens with a file that you've designed on desktop, or maybe you've got it from somebody else. So at the moment, you can just see next to that. Oh, you're not showing me, come on. I'm not getting the blue dot, but I'm looking at the tiny little icon on the flash in the top right hand corner of the icon. which is a cloud with a down pointing arrow. So as I tap on that, it needs to download it. So it's having a think about it. Now, this one is quite big. I actually, when I was rehearsing, I downloaded the wrong one and I thought that was fast. And then I realised half the pages were missing. Right, so that was about 50 meg, 48, 50 meg, something like that. Right, so this is a real file with real content. But there are bits missing. So what I'm going to do is show you that you can pinch in and use 2 fingers to move this up and down, around, zoom in, etc. So it's not facing pages because it's going to be a PDF. I don't want spreads, I want individual pages. And I would navigate through this by using 2-finger gesture, swiping up, and it's going to take me through all of the pages in that file. Right, it doesn't look like anything's missing, but there are a couple of things missing with that. In fact, there's another thing, so that's 3 things missing. I would say there's 3 things missing there. So let me take you through what's missing. Right, let's get back to the first page. There we go. So we will zoom into that. Now, Magbytes uses Myriad Pro as a font. And it uses the quirky font underneath as well, which is a cartoon font. If you look at the word Magbytes, that's the right font because it's not type, that's curves. So that was Myriad Pro and its artwork. The After Hours December workbook, that should be Myriad Pro, but it's not because that's not installed on the iPad. So you might look at the workbook and think, well, surely that's not text, but actually it is. So I could go in and I could edit that. Right, that tells me that my Myriad Pro font is missing, but it looks like I've actually installed the cartoon font, and I actually have. So let me show you where you do that. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to go into the preferences, and one of the options we had in here is fonts. So about halfway down, that is the cartoon font, and that is installed. All the other fonts are missing. So towards the end of the book, there's one that says just for fun, and it's text on a path. Whatever that font is, and I have no idea, I can't remember, it's not installed. So that's why we've got a problem there. But you can install fonts on your iPad. You do not need a third-party app, although there are third-party apps available if you choose to do it that way. So I could delete the font I've got by selecting it and hitting the bin, but I'm not going to because that would break it. Next to that, I've got the cloud icon. So if I tap on that, again, it uses the same dialog box. So where would my fonts be? So I think I have my fonts in the project in here. I think I do. Not in there, clearly. Maybe they were somewhere else. That's not good. Oh, because I'd need to see them on my desktop, wouldn't I? Do I have anything in here? Not seeing it. Right, what I would need is my fonts in here. And I can't get to my desktop to put them where they're needed to load them. But you would literally just navigate to them and then select them and then add them in. And that would solve the problem. It doesn't mean that you can't edit this file because you haven't got the fonts. You just load those fonts in. Mike, make a note, and when I can show loading those fonts, I will. So just add that to what needs to be done.
Dale's asked about them.
Well, I did do a very quick demo at the end of the desktop version. That's how the cartoon font got on there. But obviously at that point I could see my desktop, and my desktop is out of bounds to me at the moment because if I touch my desktop, you're not going to see my iPad, which is why I'm surrounded by iPads. So I need to put a font somewhere, and I could have sworn I had put a font somewhere, but clearly it's making me out to be a liar. So I will sort that out as and when I can. Right, I need to do that as well. Okay, right, let's do the done on there. So let's go back into our workbook and have a look what else we've got in here. Right, this Christmas Spirit was also a font, so you can see it is not going to look like that in the finished thing. So I need to check that font. So basically, when you're trying to work in here, you can see you would need to check every font. So on your desktop version, if it's coming from the desktop version, make a list of the fonts that's in it. Right, underneath that we have a table of contents. And that again was created on the desktop version, but it could just as easily be created on this version. Then we've got a table, which could be created on this version. And then we've got some resources, and then we go into, there's going to be 5 shows in December. So we have a title page for the show, and then underneath that, we have pages for you to make notes. So each show has 4 pages to make notes. This is missing another font, so I would need to sort that out. But other than that, missing fonts, everything comes through. Absolutely everything comes through. You can see we've got page numbers. We actually have, so let's zoom out, you can see how many pages we've got. In terms of the interface, as we're now going to be working with the interface, across the top you have your context sensitive area, but you also have the burger menu, and they are constant. Those options are constant no matter what tool you're using or whatever, you can get to those options. So if you wanted to export it or export it as a template, spelling options, anything, it's all on there. Then you have the ... menu, which is very useful, to be honest. That gives you access to these operations. You can change the clipboard behavior, you've got your find and replace in there, and other things available. The rest of this depends on the tool you have selected. So at the moment, I have the move tool selected on the left-hand side. So just to the left of the blue dot. All the tools that you have available in there are exactly the same as on the desktop version. So you have your text frame tool, you've got the table tool, you've got pen tool, a whole lot. The shapes, the images, the place options, crop, the whole thing. On the right hand side, you have access to the panels. And there's a lot of those. So starting from the top, you have access to colours. That's access to the stroke. You then have access to layers. Now the layers, that's a panel I have on constantly. Absolutely constantly on that. And I leave that showing. And it's showing you what elements you have on an individual page. So if we go up here and change the page. So if we tap on that one, we've got a whole lot more. You can see just how many groups are on there. I've got the title of the page. So let's have a look at that page. Font of which is missing. But we've got December. We've got MS Thursday. And that is the table. So you can see it's locked. But if I hide the table, you can see you're left with everything else. So that's the table. MS Thursday, meaning it's a Monday start. And the month starts on a Thursday. Then I've got the match last night. That's Wales, England. Then I've got Affinity Publisher. That's tonight. And then I've got all 25 days of the Advent thing going right through to Christmas Day. So if I toggle off Christmas Day, you will see down on the 25th, everything there disappears. Then I've got 171, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And those are the shows. And they are every Friday. So if we zoom in there, there's the banner for 171, 172, 173. I did not make a mistake with 174. That is our Christmas show. So it's always been red, and the Advent thing has always been red as well. And then right through to the 30th, which is the last show. So even a heavy page that's got a lot of elements on it, you can still successfully navigate it in here. Within, say, day 18, in fact, let's have day 16, which should have even more in it. You can see I've got the Advent day. I've got the red background. Everything that is within that one is grouped into day, in that case, 16. Let's try day 25. And you can see in that one, I've got an embedded document, which is an SVG file that says Merry Christmas. And it's, again, within the day 25 group. So a neatly organised layers panel there. But in this file, I've got a lot of pages. So I think before we even think about navigating the actual layers within an individual page, we need to be thinking about the actual pages themselves. And for that, you have this option here, which is your pages panel. Within here, I can swipe up and down and it shows me the pages. So it's a good, quick way to navigate. If for whatever the reason I want to go to the page with the red poster, tap on there and it loads that into the working area over on the left. So that's navigating the pages. If you have a huge range of pages, which hopefully we will have with a file when we get round to it, you've got an extra option in here to manage the pages, which is Manage Pages down here. That loads the pages in to a thumbnail grid. So it's a bit like the view you have in PowerPoint. So let's move that up and you can see all of the pages, a different layout. And then if you want to work with a certain range of pages, maybe you want to delete that last show, you can select all 5 of them and then there is a trash can icon over on the right and you can delete it from there. But that is the option that you have in there to work with multiple pages. I love this working yet. Let's move that down, okay? And there is a back button in the top left-hand corner to move backwards. That is really useful for getting an overview of how the text is laid out in a particular document. Also, you know, once you get to the stage, how many pages has this one got? Let's have a look. I think it's about in the low 30s, 39. So 39 pages. Once you get to sort of 50 pages, it's a great way of navigating. You also have access from that Pages panel at the bottom to sections. And in here I do have 2 different sections. So this is your section manager. The section at the beginning says Section 1, Front Matter. So if I tap on that, it will take me to the first page of that section. You can see there that the first 3 pages are front matter. So there's that page. There's then the Christmas Spirit loading page and the contents page. They do not have page numbers on. When I move down to number 4 is slightly different. Number 4 has the Map Bites branding, which is on the master page. But as I scoot across here, it does not have a page number. I was pretty ambivalent whether it had a page number or not. The page number's behind the wolf. And so the stacking order applies, and that's why you can't see the page number, despite the fact it's using exactly the same master page as that one, where you can see the Map Bites on the left and you can see the number on the right. The second one starts on that page. So that's the second section. And from here, you can add sections with the plus, which is just there. I do not want to do that. So it's just to the right of the blue dot. Or you can delete sections from there. I'm in 2 minds whether that's a lot more fiddly than the desktop, because there's a lot of things I can do with the desktop version. You can go into that and it will give you details. So if you wanted to change the page numbers to ABC, you could do that in there. You could change the start page. So all of the options for your sections are available from there. But you have to drill down a little bit more. Right, let's just go through the rest of the panels, and then as we start working with files, I won't have to stop and explain each one. Right, the next one down is your text. And from here you can apply text styles, you can change the fonts, alignments, add bullets, the whole works. So that is your fonts, your text panel. Then we've got assets. I haven't loaded any assets in here. If that's interesting, put it in. Interesting to you, put it in the chat, and we will get round to it later. Then there's your stock panel. So at the moment it's pixels, but you can change that to Pixabay. There's only the 2 in there at the moment. There were 3 originally on the desktop one, but 1 disappeared. So you can switch between those 2. Then when you have something selected, you can apply effects to it. So that's your effects panel. Below that, you have your transform. So this is where you would change the size of things, rotate them, flip them, whatever you need to do there. Then we have the history. So this is what it's talking about when it prompts you to save it. So do you want to save everything that you've done in here? I don't at the moment. It doesn't matter in here. But this is where you can go back through your history if you need to roll it back. So rather than undo one at a time, you can go back through the history. Funny story. I had some images today and I needed to make them smaller. So on my desktop, I ran them through a batch process and made them smaller and overwrote the originals. Bad words were said. Luckily, they were on Dropbox, so I did a rewind and everything was fine. But think carefully about your history. Then your next one down is your navigator. So you've seen me navigate around with the 2 fingers, but in here you can set this to 100%, 200%. You can say to fit it, so fit the page. You can set a rotation. Anything you need to do view-wise is in there. Then you have your resource manager. So this is all the stuff that is in there. Is it embedded? What is it? So I've got coffee images and all kinds of stuff in there. That's all the assets that I have in there. This one with a big dirty red cross on it is pre-flight. So that's telling me I've got lots of things missing. Usefully, at the top, it's giving me a missing font. So it's telling me all the fonts that I've got missing. And there was more than I thought. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 fonts missing. But it's handy that it's given me that. I could even just take a screenshot of that and then whip across to the desktop and find those fonts. So that is actually really useful. If you're thinking, oh, but my favourite panel is missing, you have the ... at the bottom. Some things don't warrant an icon, but they are there. So if you're adding hyperlinks or you want to work with the tables or the text wrapping, it is there. You can do that. Right, while we're in the interface, you also have this question mark down at the bottom. If I move, it disappears, so I'm not going to move. It's to the right of that. If I tap that, let's get rid of that, tap that. That brings in an interactive help. It is showing you in the middle of the screen what the buttons do along the top. So the ones in the context-sensitive toolbar area are listed in the middle. Your tools on the left-hand side, the labels are then next to them so you can work out what is what. The panels are on the right-hand side, so it's showing you the colour, the stroke, the layers, the pages, etc. And then on the left-hand side, it's got 2 buttons at the bottom. There is toggle modifiers and deselect. And at the bottom, that's what the status bar looks like when you're displaying it. So that just comes and goes via you tapping it. Just if you want to check what on earth is shown on the screen, or what's that item called again, you can just bring those back. Right. I'm thinking what's the best way to show that, and I'm thinking we need a new file. So we'll come out of that one. We do have this one, which is just a 1-page file. Right, I'm going to show you a few things in terms of the interface here before we get onto a decent demo of something. Right, let's say we want to draw a square, a rectangle, but I want it to be square. You can draw that out. Are you drawing one out for me or not? There we go. But it's quite tricky to get that square. You have a couple of options. One would be to draw it. And it would probably be good if we could see it, wouldn't it? So we've drawn it. It's not far off, but it doesn't look square. But we did have this transform option. So as long as that is selected, you can see the size in here. And I'm not far off. I'm 67.4 by 66.1. And I can tap in there. Let's make that 80 and OK. Tap on the other side, 80 and OK. And then I could do that in the middle and that would link the two. But if I do that and I start scaling it, even though I've put the link on it, it doesn't work. Sometimes if you take that away, it works better, but not this time. Right, so whether that is tapped or not, no good at all. If you're on the desktop, you would hold the Shift key down, and that is what the command controller is for. So, bottom of the interface, to the left of where that blue dot is, that, let's get rid of that, we don't want that. Let's just get rid of it. Right, the command controller. So I'm going to tap it, and it puts in what looks like the icon for a black hole. It really does look like the black hole icon that I use in one of my systems. This is a controller, and so you can move it if you want. So if I tap and hold, it picks it up, it starts pulsing, and it means I can move it. But down in that corner is quite handy, particularly if you are right-handed, because the business hand will be doing all the work and the left hand will be down here. So tap to bring it up and tap the key I want. So what I've got with that is, forget the bit in the middle, we'll look at that shortly. Oh, come on. Let me turn that off and hold that. It disappears too quickly for my liking, but it gives you fast access to 4 keys. Tell me if you're a Windows user, do you like the fact they're the Mac shortcut keys? I don't think there's a way to change them. But they are Command, Option, Control and Shift, and they are all there. Now, we know that the Shift key up here will size this proportionally. And that's what I've now got. I am dragging that terribly, and it is still remaining a square. And that is because in the controller, I've enabled the Shift key. Right, other things I can do with this. Well, I could enable the Option key. So again, imagine that you're working on a desktop. And as you drag that was not right. And I'm trying to undo on my keyboard, which isn't great. Do I need the other one? I think I do, don't I? I think I need that one. Oh, you're not doing it at all. I'm pretty confident it's that one. Maybe it needs to be engaged at the point I go in here. Right. No, it's picking up the colour. Okay, it's clearly me. Clearly me. Let's do an undo of that. But that is what that is for at the bottom. I had this working. I did. I totally had this working. And I even managed to duplicate the thing as well. So let's try that. You're drawing me out another one now. Oh, lovely. Awesome, but not what I want. Right, but that's what that does. It enables you. Now, if you have a keyboard, you can use the keyboard. But I decided tonight, my keyboard is actually just in my way on my desk. I decided tonight I wasn't going to use the keyboard, so I'm literally just on the iPad here. So I've got a pen, a pencil, but I've not used that yet. And this controller at the bottom gives you access to those 4 keys as you need them, as and when. We will see this in action when I start working with the other files, but that's what it's for. So you tap it once, it comes up, and then you quickly tap the key that you want. If you want another key, you can bring it up, and you can keep adding keys to it. They remain locked on until you turn them off. So if I wanted to turn off that one and then turn off the top one, I can do. You can in here, as I say, move this, and you can move it anywhere. You're not limited to that corner. So if you are a left-handed person and you would prefer it on the right, you can do just that. Talking of being a left-handed person, let's get back to those preferences now we've got a file and turn on what that would look like if you were left-handed. So I'm going to go back into the file that I had. Everything has flipped around. So the help is now in the lower left. Over here we've got the deselect and our command controller, which you can toggle on and off. But also the tools have flipped over to be on the right and the panels are now on the left. The thing that threw me was the ones at the top. This one takes you full screen. It hides the entire interface, so that made sense. It was the 3 next to it. I wasn't expecting those to move, but they did. They've moved from the right over to the left, which means that the button that gets you back to the live docs, which is the one just above that, actually moves from the corner. So it's still in the same order. It doesn't actually move that context-sensitive toolbar over to the right, but it does move it a bit because it's got to get the buttons from the right over to the left, which was what threw me. All right, let's get back to the standard way. Even if you are right-handed, it may make more sense to you to have that turned on and go that way. Let me know in the chat what you would do with that. Right, OK to it and back into it there. You will have noticed as we're working that things are flying up in the middle of the screen. So, for instance, if I tap and hold on that, this comes up, which is the quick menu. What is on it changes depending on what you tapped and it appeared. The idea is it's a little bit like Alfred inside Publisher. It gives you access to options that it thinks are relevant at the point that you are at. So in this case, I could duplicate that. And with a bit of luck, there's 2 of them. There we go. So I'm going to tap and hold again, and it comes up. I could copy it, cut it, delete it, but I've also got options below that where I can zoom to just that selection, or I can select everything. One of the ones that I actually really think is good on this is solo. Solo is a term that comes from audio editing, which is when you listen to one track at a time. So if I tap on solo, what was selected when I brought that up is now the only thing that is on there. It's not deleted anything, it's just soloed that element. So if we go back into there, you can see up there, I do still have the 2 rectangles, it's just that I'm not actually seeing them. So tap on, hold on there, go back into there, solo again, and it toggles it on and off. So if you're working on something and you want it in isolation from everything else, that is a really great option. Right, before I move on, how are we doing for questions?
We have a few.
Right, are they relevant at this point?
There's a few about fonts.
Right, go on. Let's get all the font questions out of the way.
Okay, Dale said, fingers crossed font management gets covered.
Right.
So that's sort of.
We've certainly mentioned fonts, I just need to find them. Right.
Nicholas says, could I upload all my Mac fonts onto the iPad?
Yes, the fonts, I will show you. I will come out of the iPad and then show you on the desktop and then show you how to get the fonts in. So, yes.
Okay. Jap says, can Publisher for iPad open a package made with the desktop version with the fonts included?
That's a really interesting question, and I've not tried doing it. I know this version can, when we go into here, no, hang on. Let's get into there. And in here, we do have the ability to package something. So it would be interesting to see if it could. Oh, make a note of that as well, and we'll cover it at the end. We'll try it live.
Leon says, can you now install professional expensive fonts on the iPad? I've paid for a really expensive professional font on the desktop. I guess I'll have to pay for it again to be installed on the iPad.
No, the fonts that I've installed on the iPad are desktop fonts. So they're not a special version of the font for iPad. They are just standard fonts that you have transferred to the iPad. So you should be all right with that.
And somebody's asked about the ruler.
Right, the ruler, there is no ruler. So what you're looking at now, there is no ruler because it's so flexible in here. There is no origin point, there's no 0 point, so there's no ruler. You can show a ruler on a text frame, but nowhere else. I don't know if that's a decision that they've taken and they're going to stick with, or whether it's something that they will adjust and add later. But no, there is no way to turn a ruler on. You can position elements. You can snap them to elements that are already there. You can put guides on and work to the guides. And you can actually, with an element selected, if you look over on the right hand side, you've got your transform and you could position it there. But no ruler. I must admit, that isn't something that I missed, and yet I do sometimes have it on the desktop. But no, the ruler is not a thing. The ruler is definitely not a thing. So do we have anything else?
No, that is it.
That's it for now. Right, okay. Okay, I think it's a good point then.
Oh, hang on. There is one.
He's missed one.
Is there a solo option on the desktop version?
I haven't noticed a solo option on the desktop version. That was really interesting to me. I don't know whether they're working on the principle that it's easy enough to turn everything off on the desktop version. I haven't noticed one. If somebody wants to have a quick look, but I certainly haven't noticed one. And the solo, when I saw the word solo, I thought that's interesting because, as I said, it comes from audio editing. You can mute elements, but if you think about it, if you've got a 20-track audio file that you're editing, if you mute one track, you've only muted the one. If you need to mute 19 of them, you'll be there all day. So solo is like the opposite of mute. It mutes everything but what you have selected. And that's exactly what it does on here. So I think they've borrowed that term.
2 more questions.
Wow. Go on.
Actually, one's a statement. Your interface looks different to mine.
Oh, right. What size iPad?
On the left-hand side tools, I have a measure icon.
I've probably, it could be hidden underneath. It could be hidden underneath one of these. I'm trying to tap that corner. No, I definitely don't. Maybe it's turned on in the preferences. I have tried not to change anything in the preferences, so it looks as common as it should be. Have you changed anything? Let me know.
Stephen Lowry says, I cannot work out how to apply my masters to pages online.
Pages online. What are we meaning by online?
I don't know. Can you clarify that, Stephen?
Yeah, give us a little bit more information, Stephen.
And Nicholas says, a general question, does it make sense to use the Apple Pencil instead of fingers?
I took a decision today that I wasn't going to do that unless I actually needed it. What I will say about the pencil is it's very precise and your fingers aren't. However, I have a Just Mobile stylus. It's as old as the hills. It's a rubber tipped thing and it looks like a crayon. So it's shorter than the Apple Pencil by about 1.5 inches and it's chunkier. And it's what I use in a demo. I can use my hands, but if I'm using my hands, you're trying to just touch something with your fingertip, you can't see the rest of the interface. So for years, every time I demo an iPad, I drag this thing out, this Just Mobile thing. It's kind of aluminium with a rubber tip on it. Maybe Mike can find it. It looks like that. So if you can find that on Amazon. It wasn't cheap. It was an obscenely expensive toy. But that's what I use because I can hold it right at the end. So if I was holding an Apple Pencil at the end, it would probably be too wobbly. But this thing isn't bad. Another reason is if you just, I don't know with my microphone whether you'll hear this or not, but that's my rubber stylus and this is the Apple Pencil. It sounds like a manic woodpecker. It drives me mad. So I certainly wouldn't want to subject an audience to it. So my Apple Pencil's here if I think it's needed. But personally speaking, when I was using just my fingers, I actually found it quite tiring because you're holding the iPad as well, unless you're working with it on a stand. It was far easier when I was going through the files that I was going to use to not actually use anything because you're holding the entire device at a way that suits you. But if you are at a desk, it depends what you're doing with it, I guess. But I find this stylus that I use keeps my hand out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. The rubber tip means I'm not bothered by noise and it feels nice in the hand, but like I say, it wasn't cheap. It must have been over £20, which was absolutely obscene when I bought it. But what I will say is it's lasted well. The case hasn't fared so well. That's leather in it and it's a nightmare. It's just disintegrated, but the actual tool itself, I think it's worth having something like that. And then just play around with it and see what feels right, what feels comfortable. Right.
More questions.
Oh, good grief. Right, go on.
If you're happy to take them.
Take them now.
Stephen says, I have a file created on my Mac. It has masters. I can see the masters in the iPad version, but can't work out how to apply a particular master to any page.
Right, I'm with you. Okay. Let's leave that one till later. I'm going to sort these fonts out.
Chris says, can you show how to save again, please?
Yes, I can. So what we'll do is we'll save this, then we'll come out of the iPad completely so I can see my desktop and find the missing fonts, and then we'll load the fonts onto the iPad. This is why I said having a running order was a waste of time. You want to see what you want to see. Okay, so I've got this file. I'm going to move that up there. And I want to save it. At the moment, tap that in the top left-hand corner, and that takes us back to the live docs. Although this file, the current state of the file is saved, you can see it says untitled at the top. So I'm going to tap the burger menu and tap save. Then tap to give it a name, and if we're lucky, the keyboard will appear. So let's take that back, and we'll call this one Squares, because we can. Right. Choose to save the history or not, and then hit save. At which point you get this dialog box, which is going to be customised to your iPad. Even if I was on a different iPad of my own, if I had hooked this up to different locations, I would be seeing different locations. I want to save it to Dropbox in my projects folder for today. I'll just put it in the root of that and tap save. At that point, I have 2 copies of the file. I have this copy, which is in my live docs, ready for immediate editing, and I have another copy in Dropbox in the cloud. What I personally do is I would get rid of the one in here. I would close that one because it's in the cloud, and if I make changes on another device and I come to this and I think I'm editing the right file, I actually might not be. But let's assume it's the next day and I want to edit that file, our squares file. So I go into Open and I go to Dropbox and I go to Projects and I go to Publisher, and there is my squares file, and I tap there. Didn't like that tab. Okay, took the second one and it did. And what it's done is it's downloaded a copy of it from Dropbox, and now I'm editing it again. Right, so let's move these squares up here and let's make it a different colour. There we go. If I go back into here now, there's my file. If I do a save, it saved it. It knows where it came from. Technically, the one on in my Dropbox will now look like that. So it didn't prompt me. I'm just going to close it. It didn't say, where do you want to save it? It knew where it had come from. If we go to Open again and we go to Dropbox, which one's it going to do? Because the preview doesn't look great, does it? But the actual file itself, so the preview didn't update, but the file itself did. If you don't want to overwrite the one that's up there, that is the point to use the save as. It automatically adds a 1 on the end because it knew it was called squares. If I then save that, it re-prompts me for where do you want to save it. Because at this point, although it started life on Dropbox, we've set a save as and it assumes we may want to put it anywhere different. But because the name is different, I can still put it on here and do a save. So if you've any more questions about saving or opening, let me know. But we're going to do the font thing, aren't we? So I'm going to come out of my iPad, which means I need this back. Oh, to see my desktop and see what's going on. Right, so I'm going to show you fonts. So I have a quick script that opens my fonts folder, only because it's 17 levels deep. So it's opening up my font folder on this Mac. And these are all the fonts that I've got. So there is my cartoon one. This one I'm going to be using later. There's the, was it Atlantic? Atlantic script. So you can see some of them are TrueType fonts. Some of them are OTFs. I've got all kinds of different fonts on here. The ones that I'm looking for on that document, so on my iPad, let's get back to my iPad. Do I have to reshare that? Or can I just activate it? Oh, no, you're in a mood. Right, okay, let's... Oh, it doesn't like this at all. iPad's got upset with me now. Right, see the iPad again. I'm going to think about it. Okay, go in there. Right, this document, if you remember, down in the pre-flight, tells me what the missing fonts are, which is fabulous. So, Atlantic and Trajan I know about, so I'm going to concentrate on those, and Myriad Pro. Should I make a note? I'd have to write them down. This is ridiculous. Let's just go get some. Atlantic and Trajan for a start. So coming out of the iPad so I can see my desktop again. Or I would be if it was letting me. And now it's not letting me. Now it's had enough. Right. So Atlantic was one and Trajan was another, wasn't it? A Myriad Pro. So I've selected the first one. Here's all my Myriad Pros. There's loads of them. Right, one began with a B. It was a typewriter font and it began with a B. Bohemian typewriter, there it is. Right, so those are some of the fonts that I know are missing. So what I've done is I'm copying them. All I've done is copy the fonts. If you're looking for this folder on your Mac, you need to be in the root of your hard drive, use as your username library fonts. And these are user fonts that you have installed. You can see I've got quite a few in here, 554. So I've got some fonts from there. Right, and I've copied them. All I need to do with them is to put them somewhere So if we go to our publisher folder that we've been working with, here's Squares and Squares 1. If I go into there, create a new folder for my fonts and open that up and paste my fonts in there. There they all are. So all I've done that for is so they're in a cloud somewhere, so I can point to them. Right, let's get that out of the way. We will now attempt to reshare the iPad. See what mood it's in. There we go. Right, so to handle the fonts, I'm going back into the preferences and I am going to fonts. And you can see the one that we have installed, which was from another demo. So tap the cloud at the bottom and then go and find them. And I have put them in Dropbox, in my projects, in my publisher folder, in the fonts folder. And there they all are. So at this stage, they're not actually all downloaded. You can see the icon in the top corner of each one is indicating that they're not actually all downloaded. But I am going to want them all. Now, they're not that big. They're only a few K each. And as it downloads, you get to see a preview. So you're previewing all of these fonts as they are downloaded. Right, so they're all selected. All I need to now do is tap open. And you can see it's starting the loading process. And as I say, there's some open type fonts, there's TTFs, there's all kind of fonts. Hopefully, go on. Done the open. Yeah, get them in. Don't you dare let me down at this point. Obviously, I've only loaded these fonts in one at a time previously, but it really shouldn't take that long to load them in. So fingers crossed, unless I've killed it. Now might be a good time for some more questions, Mike, while it has a rare think about it.
Can you just pull them from the font book from the Launchpad?
Yes, you could do. Yes. However you get those fonts, you just need the source file, which is going to be a TTF, an OTF or whatever, and then put them in. I'm wondering if this is doing anything, or if we've hit one of those we need a drink moments. It is thinking about it, but shall we cancel and see how it's done? Not very well at all. Right, let's try that again. I told you Dropbox. Oh, look, now it won't get to Dropbox, which was the problem I had earlier today. So I think there could be some issues with cloud services as well, couldn't there? It's not moving from iCloud Drive now. It will show me all of the other connections, but it won't connect to Dropbox, which is where my data is. Thanks for that. Okay, I will come out of that. I can't do a thing with that. So what I will do, we'll leave that where it is. I will put the fonts somewhere else and we'll try and kill another cloud service while we're at it. Right, let's come out of here. Get back to the fonts. Well, actually, my fonts are still in iCloud, in Dropbox. So I could just stick them somewhere else. So let's try Google Drive. And fingers crossed with that. All right, so all I've done is made a copy of those in my Google Drive there. I guess while I'm here, it would be just as good a time, so copy that, go and put them in iCloud while we're at it. Put them in there. Seeing as though iCloud is likely to be less upset, or less easily upset. Right, let me find that while I'm here. Okay, let's get back to the iPad. So, sharing the iPad screen again. Fingers crossed we don't kill another service. And let's go to find Google Drive. And there are the fonts coming in. There they all are. So at this point it's reading them in. At some point it should let me select them. But that's not even giving me a selection option, is it? So we'll try iCloud Drive instead. In the Affinity apps. You're lying. Not having any luck whatsoever here. It won't connect to Google Drive. I hope you're all happy that you see that it happens to the best of us. So if it's happening to you, it's happening to me as well.
Vela's put in the chat, this is what mine is doing in all Affinity products. And Stephen says, I've had the same problem importing the points from Dropbox after the previous publisher show, but I got them through some other P-Cloud, methinks.
Yeah, I haven't actually set that up. P-Cloud
So
in
no,
here.
you're not alone.
I'm not alone. It's
not
good to know I'm
alone.
not alone. Right, I'm not going to waste any more time in the middle of the demo trying to make that work. That should work. You've seen that I've got one font in there. Maybe the problem was the number of fonts, or maybe the problem is just it's having a moment with cloud services. What I found is when it disconnects from a cloud service, except iCloud, that's it until you reboot. That could be something to do with the iPad. I can get into Dropbox because I did that. I thought if I log into Dropbox, into the Dropbox app, but it's not quite there yet, is it? But what I'll do is I will do this at the end when I'm taking all the rest of the questions. Okay. It should be working, but it's not working. So, anyway, what I don't understand is there's my iCloud Drive. That's not showing me the fonts either. So none of the cloud services are working at the moment. A swift reboot may solve the issue, but I can hardly do that in the middle of a demo. So let's forget doing that at the moment, and move on. Right, make a note of the font thing, and I will show it at the end, Mike. Right, I'm checking here that I've covered everything I'm supposed to have covered up to this point. So bear with me while I have a look at that. Right, done all of that, done all of that. Text. Should we have a look at some text while this is in having a moment with itself? Right. Done that. Right, text. That's where we're heading. So I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to have it A4. Doesn't really matter at this stage, as long as I've got somewhere to put some text. So this is in there. It's got 8 pages. That was because it had 8 pages when I created it. But I'll tell you what I will do. I will make a file that only has 1 page. So I'm telling it I want facing pages, but I'm also telling it I only want 1 page. Right, there is a reason for this. So there's my file. It's got 1 page and I want to put some text in it. So we have 2 different types of text. We have, and then these icons that they throw me all the time. This is the artistic text where it's used for headings and stuff. So this one is actually going to be Christmas Carol, the whole book. I know, I'm crazy. Right, so that's that kind of text, but that's not what I'm interested in at the moment. But even if I have this as artistic text, I can switch it to the other kind of text, which is that icon to the left there, which is the frame text. But you can convert this if you want to. So what I'm going to do with that is tap and no, it's not having it there. I need to tap and hold elsewhere. And you can see here you've got the option to insert filler text. You can add hyperlinks. So this is the kind of thing that appears for you. It shows up there. What I'm going to do is, or I'm attempting to delete it, but it's not having it at the moment. Oh, let me stop while we've got movement here. Right, look down at the bottom of the screen. That is how you get the keyboard up. So when I described, forget that shape, when I described a very dark looking icon, if I tap that, it will bring up the keyboard and I can then start typing. Right, but at the moment, I'm going to go back to the top here. So let's get all the way back. I am undoing by double tapping. Right, so we're back to there. I actually want some frame text, and I want frame text that covers the whole of that. So at this point, I could start typing in it. So I know that this is going to be a Christmas Carol. So as I'm trying not to move it, trying to tap, bring up the keyboard manually and type in a Christmas Carol. This keyboard, well, the whole iPad's at a very strange angle for typing. So I'm typing text into it. That works as you would expect. Right, just to show you that's not the only keyboard you've got. If at this point you think, well, that's going to be my cover page, I'll worry about what I'm putting on it later, but I now need to push into the next page, you do have options for that, and that is this keyboard here. I can't move or we're not going to see it. Oh, so annoying. Right, it is the icon next to the scissors, one to the left of the scissors. Now, if you've ever used Excel, it looks like that. You tap that and you get a totally different keyboard. It doesn't even look like a keyboard, but it does change how you interact with the document that you're working with. So you can put a line break in, a column break, frame breaks, page breaks, all kind of breaks on the left-hand side. In the lower left-hand corner, you've got your arrow keys. You've also got the ability to add a space, backspace, or hide the keyboard, and that's over on the right-hand side. But the rest of this is a collection of options that are grouped based on what they are. So the breaks are on the left, followed by the fields, and if I just tap and move, so I'm sliding it across, you can see it goes on and on. So any element that you might be looking to put in, like an M dash or an N dash, it's available from the secondary keyboard. Now, if you look across on the left next to the scissors again, instead of it having like little squares on it, it's got ABC on it, and that will switch you back to the standard keyboard. So if you're looking to put something in, like a page number or something, instead of doing it the longhand way, you've got these options to do it the short way. So even for things like trademarks and copyrights, and my personal favourite, the section marker, which I do actually use quite a bit. So that's a quick way of doing that. Right, but now we've got that in there, I've got the full text of this. So I want to place the entire book. Now remember, I've got one page, but I have put a little thing at the top. So I'm going to tap the place option. And you can either place from photos or place from files. So I'm going to choose place from files. And it's not going to connect to Dropbox, is it? Bad words. Think bad words. Think really bad words. I'm going to have to come out and I'm going to have to move my data somewhere else. This is ridiculous. At least just seeing it, warts and all. We got any more questions? I'll try and get this data where it should be. Oh, you've all given up, have you? I'm not surprised.
All questioned out.
Right, let's take the whole lot. Let's take the whole lot. I'm attempting to get it in iCloud, which I thought would be generous to me and helpful. So I'm putting it in there. So you can see it's actually where it should be. Right, so I'm in iCloud Drive. I am in the Affinity Publisher beta folder. Don't ask, it should be Affinity Publisher. Right, but everything is in there, including my text. Right, so hopefully I'll be able to get to it from the iPad. If not, this is not going to be the best of demos, is it? I should have waited until version 2.5 came out or something. Right, let's see if I can get to this in here. My problem in here was, even in iCloud Drive, and I'm going in that folder, it's not updating. It says it's synced with iCloud and it's not. So now I can't get any text. So how am I going to get the text? Literally no cloud service is working. I don't think quitting the app is going to do any good whatsoever because I tried that before. But we will do it anyway. So I'm quitting the app completely. Give it a bit of a rest and then go back in and see if it's any better. If not, the only way I've found to fix it, which of these are you? Let's try that one. Is to actually reboot the device, which wouldn't be grand in the middle of a demo, would it? Right, let's see if you're going to work. Fingers crossed. No, my data's not there. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And even though I've put it in other places, it's just refusing point blank to see anything anywhere. Anybody got any ideas? Can't see my cloud service. Are we really at the stage of having to email yourself the data? I think we could be, you know. I think we could. Right, I cannot really move on and show you pretty much anything else without access to this data. Oh, I wonder. Hang on.
AirDrop, says Leon.
The way it's going. Let's have a look. No, they're not in there either. Okay. Right. And I don't suppose you're connecting to Dropbox full stop. No, you're not. Right. I think the easiest thing to do is to reboot the iPad, which is ridiculous. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pop that on the screen. Yeah. And if you've got any questions, now is a good time while I reboot this iPad.
Yeah, Deb says apps are having trouble connecting to Dropbox.
Thing is, I've put this in iCloud as well, and iCloud isn't working. So luckily, it doesn't take that long to reboot, but it's more than annoying. And if you're trying to work to a deadline, can you imagine? This did happen to me earlier today, so I'm not 100% surprised. Sometimes it just works perfectly. Other times it's like this. If it's like this, if it's just one of these days where it's like this all day, honestly, I can imagine you losing the will to live. Right, let's try that again. So I'm moving across. Let's get it shared. I don't think it's screen sharing that's causing the problem. Right. There we go. Right, let's try it again. Fingers crossed. Cross everything, just in case. Right, we're back in. And what I wanted to do was place some text. Way back in the day, that's what I was trying to do. Okay, place from file was what I wanted. And then I wanted to go to Dropbox. And now Dropbox is there. Right, let's not count any chickens at the moment. Let's just go in and get the text.
Can't see your screen at the moment.
That's another good point. It's working brilliantly here, but I'd forgotten to share my desktop. It's one of those demos. Right. Let's do the sharey thing again. Right, so I'm back in Dropbox. Are we all right now? So I've got 3 different versions of this. 2 is A Christmas Carol and 1 is just some plain text. I'm pondering which is which. I do believe this version of A Christmas Carol in the middle is the text version. So what I've done, because it's been that long you could have forgotten. Right, what I've done is I have created 1 text frame on a single page. I've added a little bit of text to it, and then I've gone to load in some text from a text file. It could be a text file, a rich text file, it could be a Word file, wherever. Whatever is supported, we're good. So please open it. Right, marvellous. Okay, so I've got my data in there. If I tap in here, you can see I can tap in here and edit it. And obviously, I don't really want these spaces in it. But I think there should be about 130 to 140 pages. But I only had 1 frame. So I'd have to start adding pages. But the good news is, if I tap and you get the move tool, and as I zoom in, it doesn't really get much bigger, which is annoying. But there's 2 icons there in the middle, to the left of that. Right. What that is the eyeball will show you the overset text, which is the extra text that isn't placed. I don't find that much use, to be honest. Then we have the triangle. And the triangle will let you link this text frame to another text frame, which is great if it's a short story and it's in 2 text frames. But when it's in a book and there's hundreds and hundreds of pages, not great. But remember our command controller that we can tap on, and we can tap shift. And if you shift and tap that triangle, it creates for you enough pages with enough text frames on it to host the text. So this might be a point, because it's that tiny, I would prefer a bigger target, to use the Apple Pencil and try and tap it right on the triangle. At which point you might have thought it went mental, but it didn't. If we squidge this down, it's created all the pages that we need to host the entire book on an iPad in seconds. So when the cloud services are working, it's amazing. And there you go. And each of these are linked. So all these blue lines that you see are indicating that the frame on the left is linked to the frame on the right, and the frame on the right. So can I tap? That frame there, that line, goes down to here. And each of those is linked. which is pretty impressive. That is pretty impressive. Be more impressive if the cloud services were okay, but while they're good, let's move on with that. Do we have any questions about placing text like that?
No.
Jolly good.
Stephen's got a missing keyboard.
Oh.
He hasn't got one of the keyboards that you've got.
Well, I've shown two, and both of those, one's the standard keyboard, so when I'm in a text edit mode, I've got all the tools at the top, which would be the bold, italic, underline, the colours and all of that, and I've got the option for the keyboard at the bottom. So if I tap, it crashed. Seriously? What are you thinking? Oh, come on. How much have I lost? The whole thing. So now I need to do it again. Oh, should I leave this video live or just scrap it and do it again? Right. I want to place the text. Fingers crossed that that I can do that and get back into it. Right. Which keyboard's missing while I do this?
He just says he's got 4 or so alternative keyboards on his iPad, but in Publisher, he doesn't see the one you're using.
Where am I looking in here for text? The extra keyboard you've got, you've obviously installed some other way. I don't think that would impact your ability to use these keyboards in here. You may just not be in the correct place to do that, not in the right mode for it to appear. So try that. Make a text frame, put some text in it, and while you're tapped in it, does that give you the secondary option? Right, I'm going to come out of that at that stage, which should create me a copy in here, which means if it goes again. Right, what was I trying to do way back in the day? Right, I need to see my command controller, and I need that to have the shift on it. I need to tap that. Obviously not precise enough. There we go. There's all my pages. At least that worked. Right, should we come out of it again and save a copy? Not that there's any point in doing that at all. Oh, you're not selecting, are you? That'll do. Right, A Christmas Carol. You'll notice at this point I haven't got the keyboard either, but I do have that down there. Oh, now it's gone mental that the pencil is attached and I actually want to show the keyboard. I don't want to write it. Oh, good grief. Right, A, C, C. And I think I need a full stop because I think I deleted that. Right, and let's save it somewhere. At this point, I really don't care where you save it as long as you save it, if it's all the same with you. Right. So I have a copy saved, just in case it all goes. Right, what was I trying to do with that keyboard? Right. If I am in here with some text, so I'm tapped in it, I don't particularly want that. I'm going to have to put this pencil away so I can see the full keyboard without all this messing about. Hide keyboard. There you go. Come back. Up you come. Right, you can see at the bottom with what I've got, it's got show keyboard, but it's also got that copyright symbol one next to it where it's showing that. So I'm going backwards and forwards between these two, and these are in here. Hopefully, because the pencil's now asleep, which is causing problems, on top of every other problem that we've got. It is not actually. Oh, dear me, this is not good. Right, I'm coming out of this and restarting it because now the pencil has upset the fact that the keyboard's there. Shall we just say they've got some way to go before this is 100% stable? Would that... That's average, isn't it? Right, fantastic. Right, you are not going to see the other keyboard if you're doing something different. So if I draw out a picture like that, you're not going to see the keyboard full stop. To get the full keyboard experience, you need to be editing text, and that should give you the symbol on the left-hand side, and then you can go between the what I call the copyright, the tools keyboard and the text keyboard like that. Right. Can you remember what I was trying to do at the bottom of the screen when it crashed?
No.
I think I was just navigating. through the text. Right. But while we're there, Right, this is probably a really bad idea, but I've put this shape on there. So if I wanted to put some pictures in there, one thing you're going to need to do is put some wrap on a shape. And so I've got the text at the background, I've got the shape on the top, before I try and add a picture to it and the whole thing crashes. Right, down on the ... lower right hand side, we've got these extra options. And in here, towards the top, we have text wrapping. So that brings up the text wrapping panel. And I would like the text to be pushed around this image. So I've got a few options. I could either make it square, which doesn't really work for a circle, or I can do a tighter wrap like that. I can also in here make it bigger by doing that. I can also lock them and add them, and that way when I keep adding it, you can see it pushes the text away, and it actually takes the text away from the left hand side as well. There would be another way to do that. So if I wanted the text a little bit closer like that, but I don't want the word him in the top corner, then wrap to side means I can push the text away from the left hand side. So that's the text wrapping, but the next thing to do is to get some imagery in there. Now, shall I just caveat this with, this didn't work for me this afternoon. It took about 20 different goes to do it. But, you know, let's have a go. So I have the frame ready. I'm going to go across and I am going to use the stock panel. So in Pexels, I will type in Samoyed, which is the breed of our dog. Too cute. Now, the issue I've found with this is sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just places it ridiculously. But what I'm going to do with this is, with the object selected, I am going to go to the menu and I am going to choose Insert Inside. So it knows that that is where I want it. That doesn't mean that's where I'm going to get it, but it's where I'd like it. So I'm going to pick him up and drag and drop. Yeah, that's what it was doing this afternoon. It didn't impress me either. So I just assumed it hadn't worked. But if I do this, I may find it. So I have a square. I'm not selecting anything because I'll lose it. But I have something with selection handles on it. It's not anywhere near the frame, but that's what it's doing. And it's doing that when I've told it to paste it inside. So if you hadn't set that option, this image could be anywhere. But we'll zoom in so we can see both of them and drag. And there he is. So he is still there, but he's not inside that frame. And this has been happening to me. Well, bad words. Right. So what I'm going to do with him is tap and hold, go up here, cut that. Go and select that. Make sure, yet again, I've got insert inside. And hopefully paste him. And there he is. Now he's inside it. Why that didn't work the first time, I have no idea, but this has been plaguing me all day. So scoot it down in size, put it up in the position, and that's how I got it in there. That has happened multiple times to me, so I'm assuming it would happen multiple times to you, but that's how you solve the problem. It is very annoying. Sometimes it pastes it inside, but not where you can see it. So the picture's somewhere else, but you can drag it over and it is actually constrained to the shape. But most of the time I found it's not constrained to the shape. I have no idea why. That's just what's happening. But that is how you use the stock panel. Get that in there. Now, I'd like to draw attention to that. So you have the option up here to add a stroke. So let's add a stroke. Initially, it's that narrow, you can't see it. So we'll zoom in a bit. There is a stroke there. Oh, good grief, and it's square on top of everything else. Really? Really? Right, let's choose that. Okay, right. So we'll make it wider. There we go, but not that wide. So about that wide. Right. With that, I want to change it with the drag handles here. The drag handles allow you to determine the thickness, but in a granular way. You're not setting the whole thing to tiny. What you're getting, it's increasing as it goes around the shape. And you can get some really nice effects with this. But it's always better when the beginning and the end match. So if I take that end down, it looks like there's no border on it anymore, no stroke. If you grab the middle and pull up, you can change that. And dragging that point from side to side gives you a really nice effect, like that. Right, at that point, it's black, and I would like to change the colour. So I go over to the colours, and I have the fill and the stroke. And I want it, oh, should we go for red or greenish? Like that. So that's giving me a nice offset there. But I'd also like to lift it off the page. So there's another option that I can use here. So we'll get rid of that completely. I'm still selecting the oval, the picture frame, and I'm going to the effects panel. And I'd like an outline on it. So the outline's there. I've tapped it, and that's activated, but I haven't actually turned it on. So I'm going to turn that on like that. And these flyouts on the left enable me to change the opacity and the width. So let's put that to about there. And just to prove the opacity does actually work, there we go. And for this one, you don't use the colours to change it. You have colours at the top of the screen where it says solid colour. Right. And this one, I'll have a light purpley colour like that. But one of the great additions is instead of having just one outline, I can have multiple outlines. And how I do that is by having the outline active and using the plus button above it. And that means I now have two outlines. It doesn't look like I've got two outlines, but I do. So I'm going to change the colour for that one. So we'll go for a yellow this time. And you think, but where's the purple one? And that's because they're one on top of the other. So if I took this one down in size, alternatively, tap on the purple one and make that bigger, and then the yellow one and make that bigger, I can do that with it. So that's a really nice addition. In Designer, you have the appearance panel, which you don't have in here. But there you go. Now, I could be pushing this, trying another demo, but I'll do it anyway. Right, let's add another one of these on. Right, it remembers the stroke that I put on it, but it doesn't particularly remember the effects. So the stroke comes through, the effects does not. But we can deal with that. It'd be nice if we had a picture in it, but I'm getting to the stage where I'm too scared to even try that. Right, making sure we've got it selected and we tell it that we do want it on the inside. Let's see what it does with this one. Oh, it could put it anywhere, literally anywhere. And it has done. But, you know, we'll press on and we'll find him. There he is. He's there. So we need to... Oh, no, I don't need to do that. Right, I need to go and get the move tool and move him up. There he is. Now, you see, this time, doing exactly the same thing, he is actually constrained to it. So, your mileage may vary, but I've had great fun. Right, let's pop him in there. Oh, no, he's out again. Right. Shall we see if we can actually get that right? No, you were in and now you're not. Right. Let's try and scoot him up there like that without removing him. There he is. Right. So the point of what I'm trying to show you is it does remember the stroke. It doesn't remember the other options. But if you select the first one, I've got that, and I go in there and copy. And then I come to this one and I go back and I paste style. It will copy everything. So you could do that on a whole range of images that you've got there. And that is how, one, you use the images from the stock. It's pretty similar if you want to place them. Shall we try it? Oh, I'm getting really nervous now. Right, let's go and get one of these and put that in there. Not really concerned about the wrapping, but I'll wrap it. So let's get that. So I've got something that I'm going to place an image into, but instead of choosing it from the stock, I'm actually going to place it. And I do believe I have one image in here. There we go. That I took earlier to put in the presentation. That one. Excellent. The reason I decided to do it from the photos and not the files is the way the files are. It might crash, and we're not doing that again. So that's how you do it if you want the image from somewhere else. You're placing that image from somewhere else. Right, we got any questions about that before I move on to the next bit?
No. No questions.
Everybody's stupefied, a bit like me. Okay, right, we've loaded the text in. I've explained about the command controller and holding the shift key down with that. Your text styles in here that you've got are exactly the same as you would have them on desktop. So somewhere in here, let's have a look. I doubt I'm going to be able to see it without zooming in. So I'm just going to randomly put in here. So let's get into there. Right, that is chapter 1. So bring the keyboard up and put in chapter 1. In fact, in here it's staves. So we will put stave 1. Right, and then in my text, which is over here, you see at the very top it says no style. And if I tap on that, it shows you the styles. Now these styles are the default styles. That I haven't done anything special with these at all. They're just there. This one would be a heading 1. So I've applied that, and then just randomly somewhere else I'm going to put in stave 2. Right, and do the same with that. So back to my styles and make that a heading 1. Right, because you can format these styles and it will read these styles in from anywhere else that you've got them. So if they're in a template, you've got custom styles, they will all come through. I'm putting them in there to show you just how easy it is up here. Oh, that's a stave 1, that's useful, but it's not our stave 1, that's a different stave 1. Right, what I'm going to do here is bring the keyboard back at this point. Put a few blank lines in, and then this text here, I want to make space to put a table of contents, which is quite advanced, but we'll do it anyway. So switching keyboards, I'm going to go in and put a page break. And what that will do, let's go and have a look at it, all the text is now on page 2. And this leaves this space up here for us to insert a table of contents. So it's not a primary function. It is available from the 3 dots down to table of contents. There's my table of contents. That's the panel. And what it's doing is loading in styles. But as I said, this is fairly advanced. But once we've formatted things with heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, it is as simple as just tapping that, which is the Add Table of Contents button, and you get an automatically updating table of contents for your book. Obviously there is more to that, but that is the basics of actually adding one. Right, so shapes, have we done all of that? We have. One of the things with shapes is these here, I'm not selecting any shape, so I've got the text selected actually, I think. Right, you have options at the very top here where it says select same and select object. So if I tap same and I say stroke colour, it should select, let me select, there he is. Right, select same and say stroke colour. And it should select the one next to him, which I do believe it has. And it selected this square one because although the others have effects on them, the stroke is the same on all 3 of those. So it's just a fast way to work. You could select via the object. So if we had that selected, you could say, I want to select the alt text where the curves are there, however you want to select it. It's just a fast way for you to make a selection and then make a change to it. Okay. Tables. let's have a look at tables. So I'm going to get a new file and show you how I made this one in here. So in here we've got some note paper, and that is actually a table, and it's very easy to do it in here. So get a new file. I'm going for A4, only need the one page. I've got the margins and I'm going to work to the margins. So the text, the table tool is to the left of that. It's the one that's the sort of brown colour. Looks like a form to me, but there we go. I've enabled it and I'm going to draw it out like that. So I want that to fill the space. Now I need to be very precise, don't I? So what I'm trying to do is get that to fit. Right, come on, select and fit. Now, I don't need anything like those number of rows. I don't need anything like the columns either. But when I tap, it works exactly the same as the desktop. So I'm tapping on there. I actually think the interface for this is better. I don't think you'll see it any bigger if I zoom in. But I'm taking that out and I'm leaving it with 2 columns. And I think you've moved, but don't. Right. Doing the same at the bottom. So down to here. And it's got 52. I can tap on the number and actually type a number and put OK. I appreciate that now looks nothing like I want it to look. But if I stretch this out, it starts to look right. And also inside it, all of these need to scoot over there. So that is done by clicking on that and dragging it across. Right, I would probably want this full page, except if it's a MacBytes one, where I had a border on it, but we'll make it full page just by stretching it out. Right, at that point, that would probably actually work as is. If we look at the preview, that's what it would look like. So this at the top enables you to toggle things off into preview mode. So if you don't want to see the baseline grid, whatever you don't want to see, you can be granular or you can just toggle off the entire preview mode, toggle that on and off. Right, not bad, not bad. Right, so I'm going to make a selection of it. And in here, I'm going to bring up the table panel. Right, I want to fill the entire table with a kind of lemon, but not psychedelic like that. So take that down so it looks like a legal pad. That's putting a fill in the entire table. But I also want for some of this, so on the left-hand side of all of those cells, I would like to put a stroke on it. So the left-hand side, I want it to be red, and 0.5 should do fine. So if we look at that now, I've got the lines and I've got the red margin there. And it's that easy with a table. Obviously, most people are putting contents in a table, but that is how you manipulate a table. And then you can put text in that, you can change the columns, whatever you need to do with it. That is the basics of a table. Right, images. I wanted to show you images because images are very nice. If I can get to my data, they're very nice. So we'll do an open and we'll attempt to get to Dropbox. And there we go. And let's see. First off, I'll show you opening an IDML file. So this is not changed at all. I've not done any conversion on the desktop. This is an IDML file, and that is it opening. There is no stopping and asking any questions. That is a full template from an IDML file. And you can then do whatever changes you need to do with that. So that's an IDML file. Let us open this again. And it was images. Placing images. Right. So I've got a file, Tasty Bites. And it's actually opened it. So the font's missing that I used, but we're going to try and sort that, aren't we? Right, but what I've got in here is a page that I'm going to put some images in, and then I've got some more pages for content, and I've got the back cover. Right, the reason that these pages are the aqua colour is to prove a point. Right, this is the page that I want to put the images in. This is where it could all go crazy. But I'm going to do a place. So just like we placed from the iPad, we placed from photos, but this time I want to place from files, and I've got quite a few photos. So I'm going to tap on there. I'm going to go and find my files, which were with my placing images, and they were my food files, which was in that food folder. So these were all the files. So they are smaller than the originals, just purely for speed. But what I wanted to do with it is select them all. And it's loading them in, as we can see. They're about 600k each, I think. And there's 20 of them. So I'm going to tap open. So it's downloading them all, fingers crossed. And it will open them up, if it's going to think about opening them at all, in a panel. So this is the Place Images panel, which is similar to that you have on desktop. Initially, the first image is selected. There is a blue tick in it. And if I were to tap on one of those frames, it would put that image in that frame. I can even, in here, because if I go and select another one, it deselects the first one. But if I want to select multiple ones, I can use the plus, which is there, and then, that didn't take, and then I can select multiple images. Even better than that. The button next to it will let me select all of them. So now if I scroll down, you can see I've got 20 images and they are all selected. And I want to put them in those frames on the white page, but there's only 8 frames and there's 20 images. But I'll tap the first one. And instantly it has created all the extra pages that I need. Now you can see here, yes, you can disappear. We've done with you now. Go away. It didn't overwrite the pages I had because they were aqua. But what it did do was make 2 extra pages using the same layout as that first page. And it automatically then populates those. It even creates this extra one that isn't needed here because it's duplicating the page and it's duplicating the spread. And then you can get rid of those or move them around or do what you want with them. But it is really fast to do that. So the biggest issue I've seen with it is the fact it disconnects from the cloud services, which could be iPad related, it could be Affinity related. I don't know, but it's happened to multiple people multiple times. So you may need to reboot. Rebooting does solve the problem. Right, so the thing to finish with is the fonts. So let me finish the presentation first. And then we'll go into the Q&A, but I will try and sort the fonts out as we go. I could actually try it with this one. Shall we do that? Right, that is not the font that is used there. So I'm going to come out of it and go into Preferences and go to Fonts. Everybody cross everything. Tap on the cloud icon and go to Dropbox and go to where my data is. And my placing images, because this file has a specific font for the title, I've put the font in this folder. So it's Bauer Bedini. No, Bedoni, whatever. Right, so I'm going to tap that and open. Hopefully, because it's only one font, there we go. And it even gives you a preview. So I've loaded that into here and done. And then when I open up this file, it automatically has replaced that. So that's what it should have done with the other one where it had a complete fit with itself. You don't really need to do anything else to make that work. Also, if we come out of there, if I go into Designer, and I have no additional fonts that I've ever installed in Designer, and I go into the Preferences, and I go to Fonts, it has automatically installed it in Designer as well. I didn't install Cartoon Shout in here either. So when you install a font, it installs it across all 3 apps if you have them installed. So if I go into the Preferences in here and go to Fonts, there is Bauer Bedoni. So just something to be aware of. I find that actually useful because I may need, it's probably doing that because of Studio Link where you switch from one to another. So if we go in there, there's our font. I will put the other fonts on later when we go through the Q&A, but there you go. It does actually work. It could have been the number of fonts I tried to install, or it could just be because that wasn't what I was doing when it lost its stuff earlier in the day. So it could just be an issue. Okay, so we'll probably be heading back into there, but let's do a wrap up. Okay. I haven't done a wrap up in terms of here's a list of what we did, because it would depend on what questions you asked. So hopefully if there's anything outstanding that you want to know about, you will let me know. We will be having a Q&A, but for the people who don't want to hang around for the Q&A, because there's been questions all the way through, I'd like to say thank you for being with us. Apologies for what didn't work. What can I say? It's a brand new app, and it's not just me having problems. I don't think it's to do with the age of the iPad. I think it's just outstanding issues that need to be addressed. There is a like button down there if you have enjoyed it or learnt anything tonight. And how you can learn more. Well, you could subscribe. That would help. Also, there's my newsletter, which is at elainegiles.com/VIP, and that is the QR code. And there is a super thanks button there. I think it's super chat at the moment. If you're watching on replay, it'll be super thanks. That is financial support to support what we do. So
and you've already had.
And I've had some, and I'm totally unaware because I'm working completely with no monitors. So I will thank you personally in the chat. But if anybody has partaken, thank you very much. It is much appreciated. So, questions. I have had questions early. So we'll have a look at those first. The number one question is there a subscription? No, there isn't. There are 4 types of perpetual license. You have your version 2 universal, which is the one I would recommend for everybody because it sorts you out for the future. I also today got an email from Affinity, and they're providing, this was something they did because they were criticised, and I think the criticism was a little bit harsh. But people who had bought the apps more recently than me, because I've had them for 7-8 years, were a little bit upset. So what they've done is they've created a bundle for anybody who has bought it, and it's free treats for you. So you should have had that email to the email address that is registered on your Affinity account. Little bit extra for your licensing. There's also a single license for macOS, a single license for Windows, and a single application license for iPad. Even the iPad apps, at full price, they're going to come to about £60. So 89 isn't that much different, and you get another 6 apps. That's just my opinion, but no, there is no subscription. How many devices can you install the app on? Now, the desktop is slightly different by the look of it than the iPad, but the rule is as many devices as you own. So even if it's desktop, as long as it's not shared with somebody for commercial purposes, and that's their commercial purposes, you can put it on as many desktops as you own and as many iPads as you own. Then there's the CAN version 2 read files from version 1. Now, this was specifically in relation to Publisher 2 for iPad. So we're talking Publisher 1 files from the desktop. And the answer is yes, but when you save them back, there'll be version 2 files. So if you chose to get the iPad version of Publisher, but not upgrade the desktop, you are going to have problems. So your iPad will be able to read the ones from desktop, but when you save back from the iPad, the desktop version won't be able to, which is why I would say that universal license is a bargain. Right, can you use version 1 on the Mac and version 2 on the iPad? That's virtually the same question asked a different way, which is you can, as long as you want to take them to the iPad and never take them back to the Mac. Other than that, you're going to need version 2 on both devices. Right, I put this question in because I spotted it being asked, and it's already been answered, but there is no ruler for the actual page itself. There is a ruler that can attach to a text frame, but that's as far as it gets with it. The next question, I should ask Mike to read it out. Now, we all know my language skills stop at VBA. I'm all right with computer languages, but it's Dutch, and this was what I got from it, which is, no, hang on, I'm going the wrong way. That wasn't that. How can I have a file that's saved as a PDF, printed correctly? Pages 2 and 4 are upside down. Right, you get to specify that on the output, but also And when you say saved as a PDF printed correctly, it may not be that you need to make any changes in Publisher at all. You might need on the printer to set that up slightly differently. So that happened to me when we were printing at the church. You remember that? They've got the most amazing printer. It's the size of our bathroom. It is huge. It can print out on like 9 different pieces of paper at the same time. It's stunning, absolutely stunning. But when we came to print, one of the pages was upside down. So I think the best place to start troubleshooting that is, as long as your output looks correct from Affinity Publisher, take a look at the printer that you're trying to print it on. It could be that it's set to side binding, not top binding, and that would mean that the pages were upside down. In terms of not wasting paper while you try and sort it out, you could take your PDF and print it virtually to another PDF, but faking the printed page. But that's what I would suggest first for that. You could, of course, just turn the pages round in Publisher, but then that would make it difficult working in Publisher. So I think it's the printer with that. Right. Shall we do Q&A now? The other Q&A. So let me whip back to there. What questions have we got left, Mike?
There's only one question left, which was Stephen's keyboard, but he said leave it for now. It could be his iPad.
I think you've probably got external keyboards installed. Like there's a keyboard for Text Expander. There's a keyboard for flags and stuff like that. There's one for apps that copy and paste. I tried all of those. One was it the Dog's Trust? They made a keyboard for the Dog's Trust, and literally it was pictures of dogs and paw prints, and it was so cute. But it became a nightmare because you're working with extra keyboards then when you're in another app. So in the end, I uninstalled the lot. So I don't have any extra keyboards on that iPad at all. If you have, that could be impacting it. But the 2 main keyboards in here, you should be okay with. That's the one thing I've not had any issues with, except if I take the pencil off the side of the iPad, it thinks it's active. If it sits on the desk and I'm not touching it, it's fine. But if I pick it up to do something, which I did, which was to be very precise on that red triangle, it then thinks I want to use the pencil instead of the keyboard, and then things go awry. So that was why I put the pencil away. But even then, it needed to come out of the app and go back into it for it to recognise that I wasn't trying to write with it, which is just a pain. I didn't like it when they added that feature. I think it was iOS 14 or 15. And they demonstrated it, and I'm like, okay. And I thought, but what if I want to use the pencil as like a pointing device, basically, a dumb pointing device? It doesn't do dumb pointing device. So one option for that is to use this thing that I've got, which, did you find the link for it, Mike?
No.
Oh, I don't think I've taken a picture of it before either. I will get a picture of this and I'll try and find a link for it. But anything that works, anything that's probably about, this is less than 6 inches long. I would say it's maybe 4.5.
Give me a clue what to search for.
Just mobile stylus. Amazon should have it. I probably bought it from Amazon. But I wouldn't want to do demonstrations without this because I find your hands get in the way. The other thing with this particular app is, unless you're working on a desk with a keyboard, in which case I'd have to say, why aren't you using the desktop version? But that's just me. You've got to hold the iPad. So particularly if it's a 12.9-inch iPad, that takes 2 hands. So I could probably use the command controller. But in terms of, then I would be holding it with like 3 fingers if the other hand is moving across it. So I think you'd have to have it propped up on something anyway. So it can be quite awkward. But in terms of demonstrating, that's why I use a stylus. If I have my hands over the screen, obviously I know where my hands need to be and I know what I need to tap. But I'm also trying to describe it to you. So I'm saying next to this button or on the left of that. And I can't see it. And so a stylus is very useful, but the Apple Pencil isn't as useful as you would think it is. In fact, it isn't as useful as it used to be because it didn't used to automatically change modes. And that changing of modes is actually changing how Affinity Publisher looks. So instead of the button to activate the keyboard, I've got a whole range of buttons at the bottom that I do not need to see. Have you found it yet?
No, because I can't find any just mobile.
Maybe they don't do it anymore. Do the Googles for it instead of the Amazons.
I did the Googles.
Oh. Well, they clearly don't make it anymore, but I'll show you. It's chunky, about 4.5 inches long. I can't see with your microphone, so lift the microphone up.
That's just mobile.
No, it looks like that. No.
Oh.
I'll take a picture. That's what I'll do, and I will paste the thing in. So that obviously isn't available anymore, but anything that looks like that is useful. Right, what else have we got?
Lee says, is there a way of having empty formatted text boxes recognised by other programs such as Forms for Acrobat, etc.?
That is a much requested feature. Much requested. I think people would have been much happier. I think people are fairly happy, apart from the crashes, with the iPad version. But I think the two features that are outstanding really do need to be addressed is the ability to create an EPUB and the ability to create a fillable PDF form. And no, it doesn't do the fillable PDF forms. You have to rely on something else. The two something else's that are, well, the best one is Acrobat, but I appreciate it's a subscription. What's that one you've got? Is it Foxit?
No, PDF Architect. Well, I think it could be Windows only.
Yeah, I was going to say, because on Mac there's PDF Expert, but their subscription, it's heckishly expensive for what it is. I mean, the license, if you just wanted the desktop version from them, the license for that is 50% more than the entire Affinity suite.
Deb uses
There's Foxit, there's PDF Architect, Acrobat does it. One option is to create your form and then that looks like a form but isn't actually a fillable form and upload it to a service. That concerns me because, you know, sometimes these are internal forms that aren't really suitable for that. But no, not at the moment there isn't. I used to use PDF Expert and thought it was great until they went to the new version. It didn't feel to me like they'd added that much, and yet the licensing changed. So if I want the iPad version, I can't not have the desktop version or something. I can get the desktop version, but then I can't have the iPad version. And I'm like, what? You can buy a license, a perpetual license, but I think that's like £130. I'm thinking it's a PDF reader. Luckily for me, I still have an Adobe subscription, so I switched to Acrobat. And I don't like Acrobat. I'll be honest with you. I don't like the interface. The old version of Acrobat was great. This new version, I don't like it. It's called the Document Cloud, and I just don't like it. But I decided I was going to persist with it because it was the only one that had all the features. So, for instance, if I create a PDF and I then want to split the thing out into individual files, PDF Expert doesn't do it. I need either a script at OS level or I need Acrobat. So I decided just go for it, just switch to Acrobat and push through the pain of the fact that the interface is shocking. But I don't know of anything that's cost effective and that would enable you to do that. I think it's something they may add, but I don't think it's top of the list of priorities, unfortunately. Right, I need to see that page that you've got, don't I, so I know who I'm thanking. I can see, I need to make this page bigger. Or change my glasses. I can see Lee Murdoch. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lee.
That was the one.
So am I heading up here? Let me have a look. Right. Thank you very much. Right. So what questions have we got?
I think that's it.
I think we answered the majority as we went through, didn't we?
Yeah. You just answered the one from Lee, haven't you?
Right. Let me see. Can I make that bigger? Ah, there we go. Right. Okay, shall we try that font thing then, before we kill everything? Let's try that, shall we? Right, what I was attempting to do was load multiple fonts. The reason I was doing that was to try and fix the Advent thing for tomorrow. So, let's move across here to... We'll leave that as it is. Let's just get rid of it. Right. Let's try the entire font thing. Right, so it was this one mainly. This one had a few fonts missing. This is supposed to look like a typewriter font, and there was a range of other fonts that weren't showing in there. The Christmas Spirit one, the Contents one. So what I was attempting to do, let's see if I can make it fall over again, was add in a range of fonts. So they were in my Dropbox, in my projects, in there, and there was 43 of them in fonts. Now it looks like I've got previews for them all, so it does look like it's sort of working. So I'm going to select them all. Trying to see if we can scroll down here. Oh, come on, select them all. Right, let's tap open. This was where it died a sad death. So we know it works for one. These are only a few K. And the fact that the photos loaded fine, and there was a whole range of them that were much bigger than this, I would expect this to work. But it doesn't look like it's going to, does it? Now, in the meanwhile, while it has a think about it, if you want a copy of the PDF version of this thing, then you need to subscribe to the MacBytes list, which is macbytes.co.uk/macbytes-mail. And that will be with you tomorrow, I believe, at 9 o'clock in the morning, which will be 1 a.m. On the West Coast. That is not working. So somewhere between 1 and 43, there's clearly a limit. Unless it's just taking a long time, which I don't think so. I think there is some problem with this. But I can't imagine what, because I have transferred fonts before, just not that many of them, in one go. And so I don't know if there's a limit on transferring 5 or 10 or something, but that's not looking too healthy at all. And so font-wise, might be an idea to have them locally on your device and try accessing them from there if you want to try and pull down a lot at one time. That's rather disappointing, because it's nice when you transfer the fonts that you can use the documents. When they brought out Affinity Designer for iPad, I was like, I'm not bothered. I'm a desktop girl, I'm not bothered. And I thought what I did, which was design posters, they were never going to look right without the fonts. So I would have to transfer quite a few fonts to make that work. And it's not working, Mike. It's gone again. So somewhere between 1 and 43. It's like pin the tail on the donkey, isn't it? But I don't know where that is. So we'll skip that. We'll say that's not working and leave that alone. Okay, so get back into there. Right, so we've answered that one. Oh, Wondershare, that's another one. That was on offer on Black Friday. But I don't have a need for one on Windows, so I left it alone. Right.
Lee says we're amazing.
Fighting the tech tonight, I'm afraid. That wasn't as smooth as I would have enjoyed. I was concerned, I'll be honest with you, when it went twice today and I needed to reboot the iPad, because obviously when I'm sharing my iPad, there's a couple of ways to share an iPad and neither of them are particularly wonderful. I did a very brief demo in answer to Stephen's question about fonts. And when I did it, I'd done the demo and then like 10 seconds before the end, it crashed. And I said to Mike, that's not good for a 5-minute demo. How will it cope with a couple of hours? It did cope, but what's causing the problems now is this accessing cloud services. So that needs to be dealt with, but I don't know if that is Apple or Affinity or an issue with both. I've no idea. But I can confirm it's repeatable. So maybe I should put a bug report in for that. Oh, maybe I have to be patient. Well, I'm not very patient. I'm not. But what I've done is I've stopped sharing the iPad and I've left it sat there. So I'm now quite happy to leave it sat there for an hour if need be and see if it ever completes. But I don't think it will, because the speed with which it loaded the text and the images was stunning. And it's crawling with the fonts and basically just not working. I will update you in my email. There you go. If I ever get it done, we'll find out. Obviously, there'll be more sessions on this when I can get things working properly. But I'm glad that I got through the basic features. I'm sure you've got other questions as you move through it. So do let me know. Let's have a look. Nicholas said he still enjoyed it despite all the obstacles. Well, you're seeing it as it is. Mike and I say, oh, should we do a video? Should we do it live? Should we do a video? Should we do it live? But I like answering your questions live. This time we did the questions pretty much all the way through, rather than a huge amount at the end. But it's nice to know what you're thinking and what questions you have about a particular thing, rather than me be prescriptive and say, never mind that, we're looking at this. So that's why I prefer to go live. But obviously the perils of going live is what you saw tonight, when stuff doesn't work. And then I get snark in the comments. Like, well, that could have been a tidier demo. Well, it would have been if it was recorded and edited, wouldn't it? But then you wouldn't be chatting with me, would you? But I guarantee you I will get snark in the comments. It's not my fault. I don't work for Affinity. If it's broken, don't tell me, tell them. As I will be telling them. If there's a limit on the number of fonts, then tell me what the limit is and I'll work within it. It's still spinning round. It's not going to work. It's not. But the problem is, when it doesn't work, it disconnects from all the cloud services and then you need to reboot the iPad, which is catastrophic. And honestly, I can't remember the last time I rebooted my phone. And I don't think I've ever had to reboot the iPad for a fault in an app.
I rebooted my phone last week.
What did you do to it?
I turned off I put it onto airplane mode because I was using it to record a video and I was expecting my mother to text me during the recording. And when I turned it back on, it couldn't connect to, I was out, so it couldn't connect to a Wi-Fi, but it also couldn't connect to 4G.
Oh dear.
So I ended up rebooting it.
No, I think when something like that happens, it is pretty catastrophic, and it doesn't happen often. I will say that it doesn't happen often. I've had apps crash, but usually, if you go into the swipe up thing, if you just swipe them up and start them again, they're fine. And, it would be all right if it did that. It would still be annoying, but rebooting the iPad's just ridiculous. And I also shut all of the apps down as well. But it's clearly not all there yet. Shall we just say that? Right. Oh, Mark says, you're fantastic. Not even Affinity wants to go into this much detail. We appreciate hard work and honesty. Thank you very much. There is nothing more annoying when you're trying to demonstrate something than something going from under you like that. That there is, because what can you do? I can only say to you, either it worked in rehearsal or it didn't. Most of the time, when it goes down live, it did work in rehearsal. But I'll be honest with you, this didn't. I did manage to transfer one font, and obviously as a proof of concept, I'm like, can I transfer a font? Yep, that's fine, tick. Can I get it in the app? Tick. And then when you come to do it live, it's like, well, I want all the fonts, and then it doesn't work. But yeah, I did try this earlier. No, it didn't work before. I've tried it twice tonight. Neither time has worked. So yeah, that's a genuine fault. In terms of going deep, I was there with the help file, and this was when you got up. I work very late. So I'm still awake, working when Mike gets up. And Mike wandered in, half asleep as he was, to find me with the baddest words ever, didn't you? Mm. I had the help file upside down, and to say it was no help was an understatement. I was looking for the syntax of something and it wasn't there. And I said, what are you supposed to do? Guess. And the answer to that was yes. Yes, if you could just guess, that would be amazing. So I then found from Affinity a downloadable demo. I thought, awesome, I'll download the demo and try the demo then. The demo didn't work. I thought, is this a Windows thing, that it needs to be on Windows? And obviously I'm on a Mac. And I'm looking at the syntax and I'm thinking it could be. But I had no idea. So I fixed it in the end, but with no help at all from the help file. And there was another thing that I looked up in the help file. I only looked up two things. The first one wasn't there at all, the syntax that I needed. And the second one, again, it was just missing in action. So it goes through all the options in this dialog box except the one that I'm looking for. And then I start, that does infuriate me. Because if you add something, I remember doing that with Affinity Designer, the export persona. And there's this option, and I cannot work out what it is. And I've tried trial and error, and I still can't work out what it is. So I thought, you're going to have to read the help file. Go for it. It's the one option that's not in the help file. So no, the help files aren't much help either. But I suppose I could get in touch, but what's the point? If it's not in the help file, who's going to know? Oh dear, oh dear. Right. So Deb says, is it the iOS with the problem? Too many just to be the apps. I agree with you. I think something is potentially upsetting the cloud link. I did have a problem with Dropbox, but it would load Google Drive this afternoon. But tonight, it wasn't updating. So it might look like it was working. So I'm going to switch to the Affinity Publisher thing on iCloud. Yeah, when I rebooted, all of the things that I wanted that I put in two places, I put my data then in Google Drive and iCloud Drive, and it didn't load them in. And now it has. So yeah, rebooting totally solved the problem. I think it's an issue between the two of them. But I always find with an iPad and the way Apple work with clouds that it is kind of trial and error, isn't it? I mean, I know if you're working on an iPad, you've only got an iPad and you need to reboot, then you need to reboot. That can happen with a Mac. But with this, it's predictable. What I'm trying now, just out of interest, well, let's see if it works. I have, this actually looks like it's doing some good. Oh, right. It's a shame that wasn't captured on video. Let me come out of this and show you what it's just done. Good grief. No, I don't want you to move. Go back to where you were and go up there, and then I'll share the iPad and you can see what's happened. Oh, magic has happened. Right, let's get that sharing. Look at that. My fonts have loaded in. All of them. All 40 odd of them. Right, how I did that was I used iCloud instead of Dropbox. That doesn't please me, not at all.
Is iCloud your favourite again?
No, it's not. Bower was already there and BD Cartoon was already there. The others weren't. So all of those Myriad Pros and the Atlantic script weren't. That loaded in seconds. So I would have to say it's an issue with Dropbox. Now they're there. Let's OK that and let's go into the quirks. And now you can see that the contents is in Atlantic and the December thing is in Atlantic. And the cover one here, there's Christmas Spirit in Atlantic. And that, the After Hours December workbook that's crossed out now matches the MacBytes. So it's Myriad Pro. What else have we got in here? I put the typewriter one in, didn't I? So if you look at that post-it note, it looks like a typewriter font. And that is also used at the top of each page where you're making notes in our next shows. So yes, it does work. Lesson to be learnt from that, put the stuff in iCloud, whether you like it or not. And personally, I don't like iCloud. I'm thinking about my data because iCloud likes it when you put your files, all your Affinity files, your publisher files together, your designer files together and so forth. So it likes it like that. I don't particularly like it like that. But there you go. That's what you're stuck with. Good job I transferred it and then we had to go with it. So yes, that worked. Even though the other one, trying to get them from Dropbox, crashed it. But because the files were already in iCloud, iCloud let me load them. I think I still might need to reboot though, because I don't think it's synchronizing anymore. So if I added more fonts in that folder and wanted to access them, what was happening during the demonstration was iCloud wasn't updating. It seemed to have cached to a certain point and then would not load any more data in. So the lesson to be learnt for me is put the data in iCloud, whether you like it or not, and make sure you've got a copy of it and preferably locally. But all of that's quite difficult because I wanted to start by showing you that the live docs area was empty. I didn't want you to think there was any sleight of hand going on, that I'd loaded these files and I was cheating. So I was completely starting from scratch. But you saw it warts and all, so there you go. It is actually working, but I loaded them in from iCloud. Oh, good stuff. Right. Okay, so I'll look at these last questions. I will catch up with all of the chat later on. We do have some stuff coming up. So, once again, thank you for being with us. Our next live show is Friday. It is an after hours. I can't remember if there's any Affinity in it. There might be. I can't remember. Oh, there is. I'm lying, there is. What I'll be doing is showing you how I put together that entire document. Guess what? I'll be doing it in the desktop version, like a normal person. What? I think I'm old. I'm just old. I like working on it. The iPad version is great. I'll give you that. If you've got nothing else, the iPad version is great, as long as you don't do data merge, because you can't data merge. And part of this document was data merged. So I'm showing you how that was built on top of some other things, including a little bit of para. Got no dates yet, but we'll also be doing the new features of Affinity Designer for desktop. Also Affinity Designer for iPad, that'll be fun. A photo for desktop and photo for iPad. So those will be coming up soon. Right, okay. Oh, Nicholas, yes, do let me know. Try fonts and let me know. Have I tried with an external hard drive? No, I haven't. I'd need to deploy more hardware for that because I've actually got this on charge at the moment. I also needed the power port free in case I needed to plug it in and share the screen that way. So having to rely, bringing an extra dock into the equation, I didn't fancy it because it was finicky enough to start with. But that could be one option, yeah. Right, okay. So Deb says, check to see if it's burying the others inside the first font. You notice that in some other apps where the imports are not opening. The issue here seems to be where they're coming from. So some apps like Scrivener can only synchronize via Dropbox. Some can only synchronize via iCloud. Drafts is one and Ulysses is another. This seems to be, it's quite happy working with Dropbox, but not for the fonts. So I don't know if there's something going on at the Dropbox end because of that. But whatever's going on, I'd rather they just said don't use Dropbox for the fonts than leave me in a live session trying it with no idea that it won't work. But it did work from iCloud. And the fonts are small enough that even if you're working with free iCloud space, you should be all right. It could be that Dropbox is creating a zip file for the download. That's the point. If Dropbox is doing something weird with it, then I think Affinity should tell you that. Because your files are fine. It transfers the files fine. I have had issues before with iCloud Drive, that it will transfer certain files and not other files. I guess it's just a case of working out what's going on and then making a note of it so you know where to put everything. Good night to you, Kim. Okay, good. Hello, Tracy. So sorry to hear about Theo. He was so lovely in that picture. Beautiful. Our thoughts are with you. It would be interesting because somebody said it worked with pCloud. So maybe pCloud will have the best of both worlds. And I've got enough pCloud space. So maybe I should try pCloud as well. So, despite everything that went wrong, I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. Chris says, yes, you did. Thank you, Tracy. That's much appreciated. I know you've got a lot on your mind. You look after yourself and the family. And hopefully you'll be able to join us on Friday. Right, okay. I will go through the rest of the Q&A. Other than that, I will be with you on Friday. I'm going to ask a question now, so just give me a yes or no with this. Should I leave this video live and just explain that all did not go well? Or should I just make it private and be done with it? Oh, what flash it was, wasn't it? Do you remember that nightmare? This was a long time ago. And it was, on reflection, it was a really silly thing to do. But I decided to demo Flash. It did not go well. It crashed literally every 5 minutes, if not more than that. Seriously. Through the entire demo. I never demonstrated Flash again, let's put it like that. Oh. Okay, Tracy, yes, I forgot to mention that. If you're a Mac biter, we've got a maroon tomorrow. Can I have a drum roll, Mike? It's 1,000 days of lockdown tomorrow. It's unbelievable, isn't it? Over 2 years, 3 years. I've lost count. 2020, wasn't it? So 2120. Yeah. It's 999 days today and 1,000 days tomorrow. So we've got a live show at 7 o'clock for a bit of a chit chat. Not a learny thing, a chit chatty thing. So if you would like to listen to more inane chat, join us tomorrow. It's at macbites.fm at 7 o'clock UK time. And then we've got our live on Friday. So busy old week this week. But thank you very much for being with us and bearing with us through all of the issues. Oh, Mark says leave it live.
Everyone's saying leave it live.
Okay, I'll leave it live with an explanation. Not all went well. But you see, now I know maybe I should have just put it on iCloud and be done. So I'll put that in all of the comments and stuff. That's what I'll do. Live is live and that's it. That I always say to Mike when I see people and people want me to train them so they can go live. And I say, you know, and then you reach a point, you've done your checklist and it's like, and they start to panic. And when it gets to like 5 minutes before I'm going live, I am cool as a cucumber. Because what I think at that point is it's too late to worry now. But I see so many people with like, I just want to check this thing. I just want to need to check that. No. You need to calm down. You need to take a sip of water and just go live. And that's it. Because you can't, there's nothing you can do now. And usually I am, but tonight that was just annoying. So annoying. But what can I say? Thank you very much, Lady Holman. That is much appreciated. Leave it for a little while. You want to go off and watch it again? I'll leave it live. There you go. I will leave it live and I will put an explanation and tell people. In fact, I might be able to put some cards on and tell them to skip forward. Through the reboots and stuff. I will attempt that and see how that goes. Because I should tell you, if you try and do clever stuff like that, I did that once. We did a live and the first 15 minutes we were talking. And people don't like that on replay. So I went into the YouTube editor and you are supposed to be able to edit out to the frame level. So I just said to it, lose the chat at the beginning. And it ended up taking off half an hour. And not only did we lose the 15-minute chat, we lost the first 15 minutes as well. So I've never touched it since. Never touched that. So when you put a card in, it needs to reprocess the video. And it could lose the entire video. So I tend not to. I tend to put it in the chat. So I'm going to put it in the description. And hopefully that'll be enough for people. But you'll see that anyway, what people think of it. And I'm loving that dancing whatever it is, Lady Holman. Like that. It's got what looks like a candy cane. I'm loving it. Time stump should be enough. I know that and you know that. But some people are very grumpy. Some people are really grumpy. And then they don't like that. Okay, so if we are done with questions, and it looks like we are, then I'm going to be lusting after ice cream. So I'm going to head off and have something to eat. But as I say, we have got more sessions coming up. It's going to be a busy old December. And if you've got any specific questions that either weren't covered in tonight or for the other apps, then do let me know. But for the moment, I'm going to say good night from me.
And good night from me.
And we will both see you next time. Stay safe, guys.